of which you will see in next 2 days. So we want more, but we also know how to live with less. We have the best minds, but we also have the kindest hearts. We believe in a global community, but we also have a faith in India's uniqueness. We love peace, but we also know that we can go to war if we have to defend ourselves. These are the values which are very dear to our group, and I'm proud to represent it today. Most of us who are working in ABP Network are so lucky to be at this time of the year, 100 years of our group. And I seek today, for the next 2 days, your undivided attention to talk and share the ideas that you have about India. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed for those words. And I think we picked up a life lesson there. Let's develop an attitude where we don't measure, but we treasure. Well, that's certainly a life lesson. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all good things really start by invoking the blessings of higher powers. And today we want to pay a tribute to our motherland. She has nurtured us, nourished us, and protected us. Now, to pay a melodious tribute to India, I'd like to invite an artist so very highly accomplished in both classical and film music. She's won multiple awards and performed around the world to packed concerts. Please warmly welcome the very talented Sanjeevani Bhilande.
नमस्कार। भारतीयता के गौरव में बंकिम चंद्र चट्टोपाध्याय जी का लिखा हुआ गीत प्रस्तुत करने जा रही हूँ, भारत रत्न लता जी का गाया हुआ, जिसमें बहुत खूबसूरत वर्णन है भारत माता का। सुजलाम सुफलाम मलयज शीतलाम मातृभूमि है, मलय पर्वत से जहाँ शीतल पवन बहती है, फुल्ल कुसुमित फूलों से सुशोभित मातृभूमि है, हर तरह से समृद्ध, सप्तकोटि कंठ जहाँ कल कल निनाद करते हैं। जब ये गीत लिखा गया तब 7 कोटि भारतीय थे, अब शतकोटि भारतीय हैं, विश्व के हर कोने में हैं और अपनी मातृभूमि से बेहद प्यार करते हैं, उसकी रक्षा के लिए हमेशा तैयार रहते हैं। द्विसप्त कोटि भुजैर धृत खर कर वाले हो जाते हैं, दोनों भुजाओं में शस्त्र लेकर द्विसप्त कोटि हो जाते हैं। इतने सारे भारतीय जब हैं तब कौन है जो इस धरती को अबला कहता है? अबला कैनो माँ है तो बोले, सुहासिनीम सुमधुर भाषिणी मातृभूमि हैं। कई भाषाएं हैं, सारी मधुर हैं। सुखधाम वरदाम मातृभूमि है, हमें सुख देती है, वरदान देती है, आशीष देती है और सबसे ज़्यादा हमें हमारी पहचान देती है। भारतवर्ष में जन्म पाना बहुत भाग्य की बात होती है। 5000 वर्ष के सांस्कृतिक परंपरा से घड़कर जीन्स हमें मिलते हैं। भारतीयता अनमोल है। विश्व में हम कहीं भी जाते हैं, हमारी भारतीयता हमारे साथ जाती है, फिर चाहे वो नमस्ते हो, साड़ी हो, चूड़ी हो, बिंदी हो या फिर लता जी की आवाज़ हो। तो आइए इस आइडियाज़ ऑफ इंडिया समिट ABP नेटवर्क के इस कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत भारतीयता को वंदन करके करती हूँ। वंदे मातरम। वंदे मातरम, वंदे सस्य श्यामलां मातरं वन्दे, हे सुजलां सुफलां मलयज शीतलां सस्य श्यामलां मातरं वन्दे, हे कुसुमितदवदलशोभिनीं सुहासिनीं सुमधुरभाषिणीं सुखदां वरदां मातरं वन्दे
Thank you so very much for that, Sanjeevani ji. You know, some things always tug at your heart, and that beautiful rendition, I'm sure, managed to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, in the past few decades, India has earned many titles: the fastest growing economy in the world, an emerging superpower, a regional leader, and so many others. But one cannot overlook the societal inequities that have been widening. Our speaker for this inaugural session is someone who has dedicated his life to social work and is making a very tangible, positive impact in the lives of others. Please take a look.
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2014 is to be awarded to Kailash Satyarthi for the struggle against suppression of young people and children.
There is no greater violence than to deny the dreams of our children. I refuse to accept that the laws and constitutions are unable to protect our children. Today is the time for every child to have the right to life. I refuse to accept that the shackles of slavery can ever be more stronger than the quest for freedom. I refuse to accept here.
Getting a greeting like this is all the reward Kailash Satyarthi needs for freeing these children from a life of slavery. He tries to give these kids the childhood they missed.
Do you think these kids see you as a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
No, I don't think they see me as friend or brother or something like father. I have looked into their frightened and exhausted eyes. I've held their injured bodies and I have felt their broken spirits. I refuse to accept that children belonging to certain sections of society are born to work for others at the cost of their childhood and freedom and education.
If the children are exploited, if the children are deprived from their childhood in any part of the world cannot live in peace. The world cannot be human.
It's not often the two winners of the Nobel Peace Prize get together, but it happened yesterday when President Obama met Kailash Satyarthi. They were joined by 3 children who were rescued from child trafficking and forced marriage.
You cannot live in isolation. All the problems and solutions are interconnected. And so the problem of child labor in any part of the world is your problem.
Satyarthi organizes raids with local police, but sometimes employers are tipped off and waiting for him armed.
But I have been attacked many times in my life.
You had a gun to your head.
Literally here.
This is dangerous work, freeing these kids.
Somebody has to pay the cost for freedom. It does not come on plate. So if not me, then who else will do? Who will Nobel Prize?
Who won the Nobel Prize, he asks. Their reply, all of us kids.
It's good.
Every single minute matters. Every single child matters. Every single childhood matters.
Well, I need not say anything more at all. Please give a very warm welcome to Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi. And please also welcome on stage the chairperson for this session, Vice President News and Programming, Sumit Awasthi.
Thank you.
बिल्कुल जोरदार तालियों के साथ एक बार फिर वेलकम करिए। ऐसे बहुत से कम लोग हैं हिंदुस्तान में जिनको हम ये बोल सकें कि हमारे साथ नोबेल पुरस्कार विजेता, वो भी शांति में, पीस के लिए, ढूंढे नहीं मिलते हैं। आज़ादी के 75वें साल में है और ये पहले प्योर भारतीय हैं। इसके पहले मदर टेरेसा थी, नो डाउट। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कैलाश जी, वक्त निकालने के लिए, आइडियाज़ ऑफ इंडिया के समिट में आने के लिए। आपके आने से माहौल में 4 चांद लग चुके हैं। हालांकि सुबह के 10 बजे हैं, मैं चांद की बात कर रहा हूँ।
माहौल में जो 4 चांद लगे हैं उसकी चमक मुझ तक आ रही है। ये आप लोगों की वजह से 4 चांद लगे हैं। तो आप लोगों को बहुत बधाई और एबीपी को बहुत बहुत साधुवाद, बहुत बधाई।
कैलाश जी, क्योंकि आप जिस विषय पे काम कर रहे हैं, हम सब जानते हैं कि बचपन अगर सुरक्षित है, बचपन अगर सेफ है तो देश सुरक्षित है, देश उतनी ही गति से आगे बढ़ता है। आज़ादी के 75वें साल में हैं हम, और मैं पहला सवाल इस समिट का यही पूछ के शुरुआत करना चाहता हूँ। एक ऐसा आइडिया नोबेल शांति पुरस्कार विजेता कैलाश सत्यार्थी के पास क्या है जो अगले 25 वर्षों में भारत को करना ही चाहिए ताकि भारत वाकई में सोने की चिड़िया के दौर में जा सके?
मैं जिस एक आइडिया की बात कर रहा हूँ या सोच पाता हूँ, या एकमात्र आइडिया सोच पाता हूँ, वो है कि देश का हर बच्चा निर्भय होकर, सुरक्षित रहकर, स्वस्थ होते हुए पूरी आज़ादी के साथ स्कूल की क्लासरूम के अंदर हो, स्कूलों में हो, पढ़े लिखे, और उसको वैसी ही शिक्षा मिले जो देश के बड़े से बड़े उद्योगपति के बच्चों को, देश के बड़े बड़े नेता के बच्चों को मिल रही हो। और इस आइडिया को मापने के लिए गांधी जी से प्रेरित होकर मेरा एक पैमाना है कि देश के किसी दूर दराज इलाके में, बहुत गरीब इलाके में एक लड़की की कल्पना कीजिए जो गुलामी में पैदा हुई है, जिसके माता पिता बंधुआ मजदूरी में रहते हैं, जो बच्ची हर तरह के यौन शोषण के लिए, शारीरिक शोषण के लिए और ट्रैफिकिंग के लिए वल्नरेबल है, उसको वहाँ से शोषित किया जा सकता है, पीड़ित किया जा सकता है। अगर हमारी योजनाएं अभी आज 75वें सालगिरह में, हमारे संविधान की मंशा, हमारे कानून, हमारी संपत्ति, हमारी दौलत, हमारे धर्म, हमारी संस्कृति और हम सब लोग, हमारी सद्भावनाएं उस बच्ची के चेहरे पर आज मुस्कान लाएंगी तो 25 साल के बाद भारत दुनिया का महानतम राष्ट्र होगा। मैं मानता हूं कि आज भी महान है, लेकिन हर दृष्टि से अगर हम फिर से सोने की चिड़िया और जगत गुरु कहलाना चाहते हैं तो उस समाज की आखिरी बच्ची के चेहरे पर आज़ादी और प्यार की और इज़्ज़त की मुस्कान लाना ज़रूरी है।
तो ये थैंक यू, ये होगा कैसे? हम 75वें साल में हैं, हम सब ने ख्वाब देखे हैं, हम सब के सपने हैं और हम चाहते हैं कि सपने साकार हों। अभी तक की जो स्थिति है बच्चों की, वो किसी से छुपी नहीं है। ये सवाल मैं आपसे इसलिए भी पूछ रहा हूँ कैलाश जी, आपकी इजाज़त से। हमने अभी महामारी का दौर देखा और इस महामारी के दौर में जितना सफ़र बचपन ने किया है, बच्चों ने किया है, हम में से किसी ने नहीं किया है। ऐसे हज़ारों लाखों बच्चे हैं जिनके सर पर माँ बाप का साया नहीं है और वो फोर्स्ड तरीके से बाल श्रमिक के लिए मजदूरी हो रही है, उनकी ट्रैफिकिंग हो रही है। जब हम इस दौर में हैं तो जो आप सपना देख रहे हैं, जो आप चाहते हैं, क्या वो हो सकता है?
बिल्कुल हो सकता है जी। सुमित जी, जब मैंने ये काम शुरू किया आज से 45 साल के लगभग पहले, तो ये कोई मुद्दा नहीं था, ना भारत में ना सारी दुनिया में। बाल मजदूरी, चाइल्ड ट्रैफिकिंग, चाइल्ड बॉन्डेड लेबर, ये ऐसे शब्द थे जो सुने नहीं जाते थे। हमारे देश में अपना कोई कानून नहीं था, दुनिया के ज़्यादातर देशों में इसके खिलाफ कोई कानून नहीं था और योजनाएं भी नहीं थी, इसलिए सामाजिक चेतना नहीं थी, कोई किताब नहीं लिखी गई थी, मीडिया में कोई चीज़ छपी नहीं थी, संसद में एक बार भी इतने सालों में कभी बात नहीं थी उस पर। तो इसके बावजूद भी जो आपने कहा सपने में बड़ी ताकत है, सपने में बड़ी रोशनी है। सपने के साथ अगर संकल्प जुड़ जाए और उसके पीछे हम जाएं तो कुछ भी हासिल कर सकते हैं। और भारत, लोग कहते हैं कि बहुत समस्याएं हैं यहाँ, लेकिन मैं इनहेरेंटली मानता हूँ कि हमारे देश में भले ही 100 समस्याएं हों, सैकड़ों समस्याएं हों, लेकिन भारत एकमात्र देश है जो समस्याओं के लिए नहीं, समाधानों के लिए जानी जाती है। इसीलिए भारत बुद्ध और गांधी को जन्म देता है। भारत में 1 अरब समाधान है, अगर सैकड़ों समस्याएं हैं तो समाधान भी 1-1.25 अरब हैं। हम सब समाधान हैं, इस नाते हम सोचना शुरू करें। लेकिन व्यवहारिक रूप से ज़रूरी है कि जो हमारे पास बहुत अच्छे कानून हैं वो ईमानदारी से लागू हों, समयबद्ध तरीके से लागू हों। हमारी सरकारों, राज्य सरकारों को और केंद्र सरकारों को चाहिए कि वो बच्चों को प्राथमिकता दें अपने बजटरी एलोकेशंस में। हम लोग बहुत खुश होकर कहते हैं और हम सब गर्वित हैं कि इंडिया इज़ द यंगेस्ट कंट्री इन द वर्ल्ड और हमारे डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड बहुत बड़ा है, लेकिन 40% आबादी हमारे देश में 18 साल से नीचे के बच्चों की है और उनकी शिक्षा पर, सुरक्षा पर और स्वास्थ्य पर मिलाकर हमारे सकल राष्ट्रीय उत्पाद का 4% से भी कम पैसा खर्च होता है। तो इसको हमें बदलना होगा, ये हमारी सबकी प्राथमिकता होनी चाहिए, केवल सरकार की नहीं, समाज के हर वर्ग की। अगर एक भी बच्चा जानवर की तरह या जानवर से कम कीमत पर खरीदा या बेचा जाता है, अगर एक भी बच्चा इस महान देश के अंदर गुलामी में जीता है, शिक्षा से वंचित है, तो हमें अपने आप को शीशे के अंदर झांकना चाहिए, कहाँ गड़बड़ है, हमें आत्मालोचना करना चाहिए और ईमानदारी से स्वीकार करना चाहिए कि ये बच्चे किसी और के बच्चे नहीं हैं, ये भारत माता की संतान हैं, ये हमारे बच्चे हैं और हम इनको बचपन लौटाएंगे।
बहुत खूब। कैलाश जी, मैं करीब 25 साल से पत्रकारिता में हूँ और मैंने आपको फॉलो किया है, मैंने आपको देखा है, हम लोग सैकड़ों बार मिल चुके हैं। आज भी जब आप अपने कैंप्स में जाते हैं जहाँ पे बचपन बचाओ के बच्चे हैं, जिनको आप मदद कर रहे हैं, क्या वो ये जानते हैं कि आपको नोबेल जैसा बड़ा पीस प्राइज़ मिला है? तो आज आप उनके लिए क्या हैं?
देखिए, नोबेल शब्द तो वो जान गए हैं लेकिन ये बड़ा है कि छोटा है ये नहीं जान पाए हैं। अभी भी जो भारत में पुरस्कार मिलते हैं ना, कहीं कहीं वो देखते हैं तो सोचते हैं बहुत बड़ा पुरस्कार है। तो अच्छी बात है, सब पुरस्कार बड़े होते हैं, छोटे से छोटा पुरस्कार भी बहुत बड़ा होता है। तो उनको ये बड़े छोटे का पता नहीं है, लेकिन उनको सबसे बड़ा पुरस्कार, सबसे बड़ा जो खुशी होती है, सबसे बड़ी, जब मुझे वक्त मिलता है, सुमेधा जी को वक्त मिलता है, तो हम उन लोगों के बीच में काफ़ी वक्त गुजारते हैं, खेलते कूदते नाचते गाते हैं और खुश रहते हैं। तो उनके अंदर की खुशी से ही हमारी बैटरी चार्ज होती है। दुनिया भर की हज़ारों समस्याएं हैं, लेकिन हमारे बच्चे जो कभी बंधुआ मजदूर थे, आज खुश होकर हमारे साथ नाचते हैं, पकड़ पकड़ के हमको नचाते हैं, सिखाते हैं नाच, नए गाने आ रहे हैं, सिखाते हैं तो अच्छा लगता है।
लेकिन जो बात कैलाश जी अभी कह रहे हैं दोस्तों, हम सबको पता होना चाहिए कि यहाँ तक पहुँचने के लिए कैलाश जी ने कितना सेक्रीफाइस किया है। आप सुमेधा जी सामने बैठी हुई हैं, उनकी धर्मपत्नी, स्वागत है आपका भी। मैं ये इसलिए कह रहा हूँ कैलाश जी, मैंने वो फुटेज देखे, मैंने वो स्टोरीज कवर किए हैं जब आप पे हमले हुए हैं, जब आप बच्चों को छुड़ाने गए हैं, आप पर अटैक हुआ है, आप लहूलुहान हुए हैं, आपको जान से मारने की न जाने कितनी बार धमकियाँ मिली हैं। सबसे खतरनाक इंसिडेंट जो आज भी आपके जहन में रहता है, क्या हुआ था?
देखिए, खतरनाक तो बहुत सारे इंसिडेंट हुए हैं, लेकिन सबसे ज़्यादा पीड़ादायक वो क्षण था जब सर्वोच्च न्यायालय के एक फैसले को लागू कराने के लिए हम लोग जद्दोजहद कर रहे थे फरीदाबाद के पास के पत्थर खदानों में, और एक कार्यक्रम, एक बड़ा प्रदर्शन करने वाले थे। तब अचानक हमारे साथियों पर हमला हुआ और एक साथी की वहाँ हत्या हो गई, शहीद हो गया वो धूमदास। मैं जब वहाँ पहुँचा, वो पहले से जमा हो गए थे खदानों में, तो बहुत बुरी हालत में खून से लथपथ पड़ा हुआ था वो। फिर भी मुझे यकीन नहीं हो रहा था कि इस तरह उसकी हत्या हो जाएगी। खदान माफिया के लोगों ने हत्या कर दी थी। ये बात 1985 की है। मैं उसको उठा के जब अस्पताल ले गया और ये विश्वास करके और ईश्वर से प्रार्थना करते हुए कि शायद बच जाए, शायद बच जाए, लेकिन जब डॉक्टरों ने कहा कि अब ये नहीं बचा है, तो उसके शव को उठाकर कंधे पर लेके अपनी गाड़ी में रखना मेरे जीवन का सबसे ज़्यादा भयानक क्षण था इस पूरे संघर्ष में, क्योंकि मैं जानता था कि उसकी नवविवाहिता पत्नी को मैं जवाब नहीं दे सकूंगा, इकलौते बेटे की माँ को जवाब नहीं दे सकूंगा। और पहली बार शायद मैं परमात्मा को इस बात के लिए भी कोस रहा था कि धूमदास की जगह मैं क्यों नहीं हुआ। मेरे तो कम से कम 4 भाई हैं, तो मैं तो हो जाता। मेरी पत्नी हैं, लेकिन पत्नी के साथ मेरा एक बेटा भी था, तो कुछ चल जाता उनका काम, लेकिन धूमदास का क्या होगा। तो ये बहुत कष्टदायक क्षण था।
आपकी आंखों में वो तस्वीर मैं देख पा रहा हूँ, भावुक हैं आप
जी।
लेकिन कैलाश जी, इससे निकलते बाहर कैसे हैं? बच्चों के पास जाके घुल मिल के उनसे बात करके, जैसे आपने कहा कि हंसते हैं, बोलते हैं, डांस करते हैं, नई नई चीज़ें बच्चों से सीखते हैं, तो मुझे बताइए, इस ऑडियंस को बताइए जो पूरा हिंदुस्तान इस वक्त आपको देख रहा है, कि सबसे ताज़ी चीज़ बच्चों से आपने क्या सीखी है और कितना उसको पसंद करते हैं आप?
देखिए, मैं कोशिश करता हूँ सुमित जी कि दुनिया को बच्चों की आंखों से देखूं।
क्या बात!
बहुत खूबसूरत है हमारी दुनिया। ये हमारी आंखों के ऊपर मज़हब के, राजनीतिक विचारधाराओं के, पार्टियों के, जात बिरादरी के, ऊंच नीच के, स्त्री पुरुष के जो चश्मे चढ़ गए हैं, इसकी वजह से सारी समस्या है। बच्चे के अंदर ये कुछ नहीं है। इसलिए बच्चे के चश्मों से अगर हम देखें, उसकी आंख से हम देखें, तो दुनिया बहुत हसीन है और एक है दुनिया, अलग अलग नहीं है। ये सब बाहर बनाई हुई चीज़ें हैं, लोगों ने बनाई हैं, हम जैसे बुद्धिमान विद्वान लोगों ने बनाई हैं, ताकतवर लोगों ने बनाई हैं। किसी बच्चे ने कभी युद्ध नहीं किया, किसी बच्चे ने कभी कोई ऐसी चीज़ नहीं की। पाप पुण्य का कोई फ़र्क नहीं है, क्योंकि बच्चा पुण्यात्मा ही है, वो तो सच ही बोलता है, वो तो सरल है, वो तो स्पष्ट है। तो जो पारदर्शिता है, जो सरलता है, जो सच्चाई है, वो बच्चे से सीखने की कोशिश करता हूँ। और किसी भी बच्चे की इनोसेंस से ज़्यादा खूबसूरत कोई चीज़ मुझे नज़र नहीं आती।
और शायद इसीलिए मशहूर शायर बशीर बद्र साहब ने लिखा है, आपकी इजाज़त से मैं सुनाना चाहता हूँ। उड़ने दो परिंदों के अभी शोक हवाओं में, उड़ने दो परिंदों को अभी शोक हवाओं में, फिर लौट के बचपन के ज़माने नहीं आते। हम सब भी जब बचपन को याद करते हैं
और
तो चेहरे पे मुस्कुराहट आ जाती है।
उन्हीं ने सुमित जी ये भी लिखा है
जी
कि घर से मस्जिद बहुत दूर है, चलो यूं कर लें, घर से मस्जिद बहुत दूर है, चलो यूं कर लें, किसी रोते हुए बच्चे को हंसाया जाए।
बहुत खूब। अब एक चीज़ और, क्योंकि कैलाश जी के बारे में हमने बहुत कुछ पढ़ा है, हम सब बहुत कुछ जानते हैं दोस्तों, पर कुछ चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जो शायद सिर्फ सुमेधा जी जानती हैं। मैं माफ़ी चाह रहा हूँ मैम, आपकी इजाज़त से ये मैं अपनी लिमिट को थोड़ा सा क्रॉस कर रहा हूँ। आप बहुत अच्छा खाना बनाते हैं, उनसे अच्छा नहीं बनाते हैं, मैं जानता हूँ। बेस्ट
चलिए ये ठीक किया आपने, नहीं तो मुझे घर भी जाना है थोड़ी देर बाद।
सर को कुकिंग का बहुत शौक है, तो क्या बनाते हैं? और कोई रेसिपी सिखा के चाहिए, वो आइडिया भी दे दीजिए सर।
हम लोग बहुत शुद्ध शाकाहारी लोग हैं, तो अंडे भी नहीं खाते, इसलिए ऑमलेट भी बनाना नहीं जानते। लेकिन शाकाहारी खाने में बहुत चीज़ें बना लेता हूँ मैं। और सुमेधा जी जिसकी तारीफ़ करती हैं, मेरे बच्चे तो सब चीज़ों की तारीफ़ करते हैं, लेकिन सुमेधा जी जिसकी तारीफ़ करती हैं, शादी से पहले मैंने उनको बना के खिला दिया था। हो सकता है कि उससे भी थोड़ा बूस्ट मिला हो उनके फैसले को। तो वो भरमा टमाटर जो है, टमाटर की रेसिपी, टमाटर के अंदर सारा एक छेद करके और उसके अंदर पनीर और अच्छी चीज़ें भर के, कई तरह के मसाले मिला के और कुछ ड्राई फ्रूट भी डाल सकते हैं, तो वो जो बनाता हूँ मैं, और उसकी ग्रेवी, तो वो उनको सबसे अच्छी लगती है, इसलिए उसी ग्रेवी के बारे में मैंने बताया और उसी डिश के बारे में बताया।
तो उसी से आपका दिल जीता। लेकिन कैलाश जी, ये सब बातें तो ठीक है, जब तक आप मुझे खिलाएंगे नहीं, मुझे कैसे पता लगेगा बच्चा बना?
मैं आपको आमंत्रित करता हूँ और
इसे कहते हैं
अगर आप नहीं आए, सार्वजनिक तौर पर मैं सुमित जी को आमंत्रित करता हूँ कि मैं उनको वही रेसिपी खिलाऊंगा और इसके अलावा 3-4 और बनाऊंगा शाकाहारी खाना, और नहीं आए तो आपकी जिम्मेवारी।
नहीं, मैं पक्का आऊँगा, आप बुला के तो देखिए। एक चीज़ और जानना चाहूँगा कैलाश जी, अब थोड़े से संजीदा विषय पे चलना चाह रहा हूँ वापस। अब नई शिक्षा नीति की बात हो रही है, सरकार एक 5+3+3+4 की बात कर रही है अब, और कह रही है कि अपनी मातृभाषा में पढ़ना चाहिए। इस नई शिक्षा, क्योंकि आपने बच्चों के लिए बोला कि शिक्षा की ज़रूरत है, इस नई शिक्षा नीति से कितनी मददगार अपने सपनों की हो सकते हैं जो हमको 25 साल के बाद हिंदुस्तान देखना है?
मुझे लगता है कि ये नई शिक्षा नीति बहुत अच्छी है और बहुत सारे जो पुराने बायस थे, पुराने फ्रेमवर्क थे सोचने के और शिक्षा पद्धतियों के, उनसे आज़ादी देती है ये, और निश्चित तौर पर इससे बच्चों को स्वाभाविक रूप से विकसित होने का मौका मिलेगा।
तो इसको लागू करने से फ़ायदा होगा आपको?
निश्चित इसको लागू करने से फ़ायदा होगा और बच्चे ज़्यादा सीख पाएंगे उससे।
कैलाश साहब, ये भी मैं आपसे जानना चाहता हूँ, हमने अमूमन सत्यार्थी सरनेम सुना नहीं है, आपने सरनेम अपना छोड़ा, तो वो क्यों छोड़ा और उसकी वजह क्या थी, वो क्या जिद थी? वो
मैं एक ब्राह्मण परिवार में पैदा हुआ जहाँ मेरे माता पिता भाई वगैरह सब छुआछूत मानते थे, और मुझे बचपन से ही ये लगता था कि ये बात 60 साल पुरानी है, तो और ज़्यादा बुरी हालत थी, अब तो इतना नहीं है असर उसका, लेकिन पहले था। तो मैं गांधी जी से प्रभावित हुआ छुआछूत के खिलाफ, और जब मेरी उम्र 15 साल की थी तो मैंने कुछ नेताओं के भाषण सुने और बहुत बड़ी बड़ी बातें करते थे मेरे शहर विदिशा में। तो मेरे मन में आया कि एक भोज रखा जाए जिसमें जो मेहतरानी कहलाने वाली हमारी दलित माताएं हैं, बहनें हैं, वो खाना आके पकाएं, और ये नेता जो गांधीवादी हैं, गांधी जी की बात करते हैं, यही सबसे आगे रहेंगे, क्योंकि ये तो पहले से ही क्रांति कर चुके हैं। मेरे मन में था ये, मैं नहीं जानता था कि कितना बड़ा फ़र्क है उनके बोलने में और करने में। तो मैंने एक भोज आयोजित किया अपने मित्रों के साथ। उस भोज में उन सबको बुलाया, उन्होंने हाँ कर दिया, लेकिन कोई आया नहीं, एक भी व्यक्ति हमारे उस खाने में नहीं आया जो खाना हमारी उन माताओं ने पकाया। बहुत दुख हुआ मुझे। गांधी जी की एक नए पार्क के सामने हमने एक बैठ के ये रखा था, मैं गांधी जी की मूर्ति के बगल में खड़ा था और मैं सोच रहा था कि कितना मजाक, कितना भद्दा मजाक है, गांधी जी के नाम पर बड़ी बड़ी बातें लोग करते हैं। ये बात तब सोचिए कि 50 साल पुरानी है। तो बहुत दुख में रोने लगा मैं। तभी मेरे, और खिचड़ी बनी हुई रखी थी, बनाई हुई, तभी एक माँ ने, जिसको लोग अछूत समझते थे, मेरे पीठ पर हाथ रख के कहा, बेटा तू क्यों रोकता है, तूने तो जो कर दिया वो हम सोच भी नहीं सकते, किसी ने किया नहीं, ये सब बातें करते हैं लोग, खाना खा बेटा। तो मैंने खाना उठा के खाया। घर आया तो पंडितों ने और सब लोग हमारे बैठे हुए थे, रिश्तेदार, जान पहचान के लोग, कहा कि इसको अब परिवार को देश जाति निकाला दे दो, या इनको जाना पड़ेगा हरिद्वार, वहाँ पर मुंडन करा के और गंगा स्नान और 101 ब्राह्मणों का भोज। तो मैं और फ्यूरियस हो उठा, मुझे बहुत और गुस्सा आ गया। मैंने कहा मैं ये नहीं करूँगा, चाहे घर छोड़ दूँ। तो अंत में फैसला हुआ कि इस लड़के को एक अलग कमरा दे दो और ये अछूत की तरह रहेगा। तो मैं कई वर्षों तक वहाँ रहा, एक कमरे में अलग से, और मेरी माँ रोती थी जब वो बाहर से मुझे अंदर खाना डालती थी या पानी भेजती थी। लेकिन मैंने भी बहुत कठोरता से अपने दिल को मजबूत किया, और तब मैंने सोचा कि ये मुझे जाति से क्या निकालेंगे, मैं ही अपने जीवन से ये जाति पाति सांप्रदायिकता का ये सब छुआछूत जीवन भर के लिए निकाल देता हूँ। और उसकी सरल शुरुआत थी कि मैं अपना नाम बदल के और उपनाम रख लूँ नया, तो सत्यार्थी नाम मैंने रख लिया।
क्या बात, इंस्पिरेशनल स्टोरी है, और ये हम सबको ज़रूर इस तरफ सोचना चाहिए। हम लोग पूरी उम्र काम करते हैं नाम पाने के लिए, शोहरत पाने के लिए, इनाम पाने के लिए, लेकिन कैलाश जी उन लोगों में से हैं दोस्तों जिनको दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा अवार्ड मिला, नोबेल पीस प्राइज़, और उन्होंने छोड़ दिया। आपको पता है कि नहीं? वो अवार्ड कैलाश जी ने अपने पास रखा नहीं है, उन्होंने डेडिकेट कर दिया है। ऐसा क्यों और किसके लिए?
देखिए, मैं पहले से ये मानता था कि आप जब तक कुर्सी पे बैठे हैं तब तक तो ठीक है, लेकिन कुर्सी आपके अंदर बैठ जाए तो सारा पतन शुरू हो जाता है दिमाग में। इसी तरह जो मेडल है वो बाहर रहे तो अच्छा है, लेकिन आपके दिमाग में बैठ के जम जाए कोई भी पुरस्कार तो फिर बुरा हो जाता है। तिजोरी घर में रखी रहे ठीक है, दिमाग में भर जाए तिजोरी तो गड़बड़ है। तो जब ये हुआ तो पता लगा कि रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर जी हमारे पहले, सब जानते हैं कि नोबेल लॉरिएट थे साहित्य के, और उनका पुरस्कार चोरी हो गया था, उनका मेडल। तो राष्ट्रपति जी से जब हम मिले, प्रणब मुखर्जी जी से, तो उन बहुत भावुक हो उठे। उन्होंने कहा कि भारत की धरती पर कोई एक नोबेल मेडल नहीं है, क्योंकि बाकी लोग तो सब विदेशी बन गए थे, तो ले गए अपने अपना जहाँ के थे। तो हमारे मन में आया कि ये मेडल राष्ट्र को समर्पित कर दिया जाए। तो हमने एक चिट्ठी लिख दी उनको, तो उन्हें भरोसा नहीं हुआ, और ऐसा कोई प्रेसिडेंट नहीं था पूरी दुनिया में किसी ने अपना नोबेल शांति पुरस्कार अपने राष्ट्र को समर्पित नहीं किया था। तो मैंने कहा कि ये तो भले ही ना किया हो, लेकिन कोई साधारण से साधारण भारतीय ये कर सकता है। मैं वो भारतीय हूँ और मैंने वो ले जाके उनको सौंप दिया। और तब मैंने कहा कि देखिए, ये मेरे कारण नहीं है, जो भी मैं हूँ आज वो भारत की जनता के कारण हूँ। सुमित जी, आप जानते हैं कि आप जैसे पत्रकारों ने उस मुद्दे को हमारे साथ मिलकर उठाया, तो पत्रकारों का भी बहुत मैं कृतज्ञ हूँ, जिसके वजह से जो एक नॉन इशू था वो इशू बन पाया, जुडिशरी की वजह से, सबके वजह से। तो मैंने उनको दिया भारत की जनता के नाम, राष्ट्रपति जी को, और कहा कि मेरा मुझ में कछु नहीं, जो कछु है सब तोर, भारत माता के लिए। मेरा मुझ में कछु नहीं, जो कछु है सब तोर, और तेरा तुझको सौंपते क्या लागत है मोर। मैंने दे दिया।
कैलाश जी शुक्रिया, क्योंकि मैं कैलाश जी को कई सालों से जानता हूँ, शायद इसीलिए हमारे बीच ये जो थोड़ी सी केमिस्ट्री आपको दिखाई दे रही है, ये 20-25 साल की पुरानी जान पहचान है, दोस्ती है। आप नारे अच्छे लगाते हैं, आप जब आंदोलन में रहते हैं तो गीत गाते हैं, उद्वेलित करते हैं, लोगों को जोड़ते हैं, और आज ये भी एक आंदोलन की शुरुआत है, आइडियाज़ ऑफ इंडिया। मैं चाह रहा हूँ कि एक शानदार गीत आपकी ज़ुबान से, आपके मुँह चेहरे से आएगा तो इस कार्यक्रम की शोभा में और 4 चांद लग जाएंगे।
तो सुमित जी, जब मैं शुरू में विदेश यात्रा करता था, और विदेश यात्रा किसी शौक में नहीं की मैंने कभी भी, अपने कार्य को फैलाने के लिए एक वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का भाव मेरे अंदर था। मेरे लिए पाकिस्तान के बच्चे भी उतने ही प्रिय थे और हैं और रहेंगे जितने भारत के बच्चे।
बिल्कुल।
और उतने ही अमेरिका के हैं, उतने ही अफ्रीका के हैं, उतने ही नेपाल के हैं, दुनिया भर के बच्चे मेरे बच्चे हैं, मैं ये मानता हूँ। लेकिन तब भी मैं जब बाहर होता था तो याद आती थी भारत की। तब मैं कई बार वो काबुली वाले का गाना सुनाता था लोगों को।
अरे वाह, सबको सुनाइए ना।
तो और फिर वो बार बार सुनाने लगा, तो भारतीय मूल के लोगों को बड़ा अच्छा लगता था। है मेरे प्यारे वतन, है मेरे बिछुड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, चूम लूं मैं उस जुबां को जिस पे आए तेरा नाम। सबसे रंगी सुबह तेरी, सबसे रंगी तेरी शाम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान।
वाह, शुक्रिया, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू सो मच। तो दोस्तों, ये थे कैलाश सत्यार्थी आइडियाज़ ऑफ इंडिया के ओपनिंग सेशन के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया तहे दिल से। और मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि ये हिंदुस्तान यान बान शान चमकती रहे और आप जैसे बड़े बड़े लोगों का साथ हम लोगों को इस मंच पर मिलता रहे। थैंक यू सो मच कैलाश जी, थैंक यू।
Very much. Thank you, Sumit. Kailash ji, आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे, please remain on stage. We'd like to present you with a small token of our gratitude for giving us time today. Please welcome Rajiv Khandekar, Senior Vice President, News Programming, ABP Network. Thank you very, very much, कैलाश जी। जितने खूबसूरत आपके विचार हैं, उतनी ही दिल को छूने वाली आपकी आवाज़ है। धन्यवाद। Thank you for giving us time.
मेरी आवाज़ ने आपको दिल को छू, हाथ मिलाऊं आपसे?
जी बिल्कुल। Thank you so much, sir, for giving us time. Ladies and gentlemen, Kailash Satyarthi. Moving on now to our next session. I think I want to see a show of hands here if there are people in the room who think that our idea of happiness has somewhat changed after we've battled the devastating pandemic. Yes? Absolutely, it has changed. Now, for some of us, the small things have started mattering more. For others, ambition has been on overdrive after, 2 years of restrictions. Whatever group of people you may fall in, we are constantly in the pursuit of happiness, our customized version of it. Our keynote speaker is an electrical engineer who is now helping millions understand how to overcome life's many challenges as we strive to get closer to our individual ideas of happiness. He's got 1 billion+ views on social media and inspires us every single day. Please give a very warm reception to Guru Gaur Gopal Das.
Okay, good. Thank you. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't look like you're very happy seeing me. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. We can do better, guys. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Brilliant. That sounds brilliant. It's my great privilege, pleasure, and honor to be here this morning at this Ideas for India Conc Summit 2022. I, at the very outset, want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the ABP Network group for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this fantastic summit and this conclave. So extremely grateful for being here with all of you this morning. And I'm sure you had a great session with Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji, and I'm sure you're going to have many more today and tomorrow as well. This summit is organized on the occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the 75th year of independence for India. And I'm reminded of a very beautiful Sanskrit phrase that I often refer to, which is called Simhavalokanam. I remember I was in Mauritius, and they took me to an adventure park, and I was meant to be walking with lions there. And as I was walking with a lion, holding the tail of the lion in my hand, I saw a lion do something very interesting. The lion would look back every now and then. In Sanskrit, avalokan means glance and simha means a lion. Translated in English, simhavalokan means the glance of a lion. When the lion is moving ahead, moving forward, the lion constantly looks back. And when it looks back, it looks at where has it come? From where was it and how long has it come? What are the hurdles? What are the obstacles that it has overcome to reach where it is today? And then the lion keeps its eyes focused on where it is meant to reach from where it is now. 75 years of independence, and it's Simhavalokanam, looking back into the past to see where we were, where we are today, to look at what were the hurdles we have overcome, to see what has gone wrong, to see what has gone right, to repeat what has gone right, and refine what has gone right, to rectify what has gone wrong. And that's called Simhavalokanam. Well, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav definitely deserves a celebration. But Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav also deserves deliberation. And if there's no deliberation along with celebration, we just live in those happy-go-lucky moments celebrating, say, oh, we did it, man. We have a whole future to come. And that's precisely what the idea of summits like this is. Celebrate what we've achieved, deliberate on what could have gone wrong, what is going wrong, and strategize for the future in whatever space we're talking about. Of course, the subject that I was asked to speak on is the pursuit of happiness. How many of you guys fly? Oh, I don't mean fly as a bird, as in fly on a plane. And how many of you guys can, with hand on your heart, say that the takeoff of the flight is not in our control at all? I was flying from Moscow, Russia, to Ukraine, Kiev, not today. 2005. And I was flying on an airline called Aeroflot. What an airline, I must tell you. Tough competition to Air India, trust me. Of course, Air India today is a different equation. I come on board the flight, I settle myself down in the seat, and the stewardess comes up to me and says, welcome on board, sir, we guarantee takeoff. I said, landing, madam? She said, you're a monk, right? Pray. We can, with a hand on our heart, say that, well, the takeoff's not in our control. And what about the landing? The landing's not in our control as well. How many of you held the seat in front of you when the plane landed? Honestly. Most of us, as if it's going to save us. We've done it. The three biggest fears in the world today are your Wi-Fi signal is poor. Number two is your battery is dying. And number three is when you're watching Netflix, it's still loading, the Sudarshan Chakra, still buffering. But the three fears back in the day were, number one was the fear of public speaking. Number two was the fear of dying. And number three was the fear of flying. I guess that's why they call an airport a terminal, maybe. Possibly. Not too sure, possibly. Believe me, the takeoff and the landing of the journey is not in our control at all. Absolutely not in our control. And in between the takeoff and the landing is a lot of turbulence often. And funny enough, the turbulence is not in our control as well. Can you imagine three important aspects of the journey are absolutely beyond our control? The takeoff, the landing, and the turbulence. But what we do have in our control when we fly is the choices we make on board the flight. Nobody can control what you do whilst you're on the flight. Nobody can control. Nobody can program you for that. You have a free will. You have a choice. And you can choose. On a long international flight, sometimes people just keep eating. Any of you like eaters? Okay, good. Brilliant. I'm going to say that later, madam. Indian guys have a philosophy. Indian guys in particular. वो लोग कहते हैं पैसा भरा है ना फ्लाइट का बूंद बूंद खाली करके उतरूंगा मैं. My apologies. Some guys will go to sleep at takeoff and they wouldn't even wake up when they land. Some guys bring a big, thick, fat book to, not because they love reading, they just want to show the other guys, I read. That's you? All right, thank you, man. And you find some guys who will speak so much to the fellow passenger because they don't get to speak at home. Trust me, Can anybody, the cabin crew, the pilot, the co-pilot, control what you choose during the journey? They may control the takeoff, the landing, the turbulence, not even in their control, but the choices we make is absolutely within our control. And I feel life is exactly the same. A journey, where the takeoff of the journey of our life begins with our birth. And the takeoff of the journey of our life is not in our control at all, is it? Did we have a choice over where we were born, to whom we were born, with what looks we were born? Nobody looks as good as their Instagram display picture. And nobody looks as ugly as their Aadhaar card picture. So, just happens to be the truth. We didn't choose our looks, we didn't choose our parents, we didn't choose our socioeconomic status, we didn't choose the community we were going to be born in, we didn't choose the bloody city we were meant to be born in, we didn't choose the country we were meant to be born in, we didn't choose any of those things. The takeoff of the journey of our life was absolutely beyond our control. And the landing of the flight, which is represented by death, is not in our control as well, unless we decide to emergency land our plane and take matters into our hands by attempting suicide. But otherwise, even death, landing, is not in our control in the natural course of events. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? In between takeoff and landing, birth and death, there's a lot of turbulence. A lot of bloody turbulence that happens. A lot of upheavals that happen in our life. Personal upheavals, emotional upheavals, financial upheavals, social upheavals, political upheavals. So much going on in the world, so much going on in our lives, so much going on around us. And medical upheavals, if I might use that term, the pandemic. I mean, can you imagine, for the first time in the history of the world, we were told stay away from positive people. Whoever told us that? One of my friends comes up to me and says, in the last over 18, 20, whatever months, my hands have ended up consuming more alcohol through sanitizers than my liver did in my entire lifetime. Trust me, so many upheavals. There's always going to be a stimulus. There's always going to be a trigger. There's always going to be a cause. There's always going to be a reason to ruin your happiness, to ruin your joy, to ruin your peace. Every single day of our life, we're going to have triggers to keep us disturbed. While you're sitting here, you might receive a message which is going to disturb the entire day for you. Whilst you're sitting here, and looking at the markets and your stock prices and how your stocks are faring, you might get the most disturbing news that the stocks you invested in is going down, sinking down. Is there going to be a single day? Is there going to be a single day in our life that there won't be turbulence, there won't be triggers, there won't be stimuli, there won't be causes, there won't be reasons, there won't be issues, there won't be problems that we're going to go through? It's not going to be a single day, guys. इसलिए मैं कई बार कहता हूं, जिंदगी है ना जनाब, जिंदगी है ना जनाब, तकलीफ तो होगी ही, वरना मरने के बाद ना जलने का भी एहसास नहीं होता. Can't even figure out. मौत को लोग यूं ही बदनाम करते हैं जी. तकलीफ वैसे जिंदगी से है, मरने से नहीं. Once and done. Death once and done. Life every day. I was walking at Oxford Street in London, and there's a guy walking in front of me. He was wearing an incredible t-shirt. I love watching t-shirt slogans. They're funny sometimes. He's wearing a t-shirt and it said, "Do not disturb." And underneath in bold letters was written, "Already disturbed." Like, what do you disturb a disturbed guy? There's always going to be problems, issues, challenges, worries, anxieties, negativities. That's the kind of world we live in. Which is precisely when we talk about pursuit of happiness, we're talking about how can we effectively navigate through those problems. How can we effectively handle those issues? Problems happen. Happiness You have to make it happen. Anger happens. Peace, you have to make it happen. Hatred happens. Love, you have to make it happen. Negativity happens. Positivity, you have to make it happen. Anxiety happens. Freedom from stress and anxiety, you have to make it happen. Guys, problems happen. Happiness, you have to make it happen. Happiness won't happen automatically. We will have to take the responsibility to choose happiness. People who are smiling doesn't mean that they're going through the best moments of their life. It's just that they've chosen to face it in the right spirit. People who seem to be happy, it's not that everything's going great in their lives. It's just that they have a very high TQ. In the world of EQ and IQ and SQ, they have a very high TQ, tolerance quotient. They have a very high RQ, resilience quotient. They're able to face what they're going through with grit, with determination, with a spirit in a way that they can smile despite whatever's happening around them. And therefore, when we're talking about happiness indeed, we're talking about choosing to be happy. Choosing to be happy. The greatest asset that each lady and gentleman in this audience and everywhere around the world has is not money, not talent, not skill, not resource. The greatest asset they have is their ability to choose. Ability to choose and craft the kind of life that they want. We are sculptors of our life. We are architects of our life. No building, no structure happens automatically. Good structures are designed by good architects. Good sculptures are made by good sculptors. And good lives are designed by human beings who have an understanding of how to craft those lives effectively. Otherwise, well, another life led. Another statistic in the 7.5 billion people that are there on the planet Earth. And which is why when we're talking about happiness, it is a very crucial principle to remember that we need to take collective and individual responsibility for being happy. When we are talking about Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and when we're talking about pursuit of happiness in this country and globally in the world around us, we need to craft a happy life together, and we need to craft a happy life as individuals within our own personal lives. I'm going to talk a little bit about both before I wind up and summarize what we have spoken about this morning. I remember I was in Los Angeles and a friend of mine from Denmark came up to me and handed me a book. It was a very interesting book. The book was called Happy as a Dane. Look it up if you like to ever. If you ever get a chance to pick up the book, it's called Happy as a Dane. And it's about 10 reasons why Danish people are the happiest in the world. And what I loved about the book was they didn't just put the responsibility of your happiness on you. Yes, it's my responsibility for sure. But it spoke about a collective responsibility of crafting a happy nation, a happy community, a happy society. And one of the first aspects of that book is good governance. If you don't have good governance, there's no question of happiness. In a country, you need to have an ecosystem. You need to have infrastructure. You need to have educational facilities. You have healthcare facilities. Imagine somebody who is struggling with cancer and you're talking about a bloody happy life and can't even afford good treatment. The first thing you need to do is give them treatment so he or she can think about happiness. Imagine somebody who can't afford education. Imagine somebody who cannot afford good housing. If you can't afford good housing, you're talking about happiness, bloody happiness? When your roof is leaking? When you don't have anything to put up on your plate? You don't have the basic facilities to put up on your plate? Guys, when you're talking about happiness, collective happiness means good governance. Denmark, whether the whole book was about governance. I loved it. I loved it. Because it spoke about what what the governance in Denmark was about and what it did to create that ecosystem so their people could choose. Not that they will choose, but they could choose to remain a happy life. At least they don't have to bother about that other side now. You know? And then, of course, the book also spoke about collective responsibility, not just as governance, but as human beings. In Japan, there's a saying that you'd say, you know, if everybody can do it, I can do it too. If nobody can do it, I must do it. In India, it's very different. Bharatamadhe वेगळं असतं. A little different. India, it's like, if everybody can do it, why should I do it? And if nobody can do it, how can I do it? Imagine a country where this is the level of responsibility. You think we create a happy society, a happy community, a happy life? A happy life is a responsibility, not just of leadership and governance, but of a society of human beings. It's a responsibility of people who treat each other as human beings, with feelings, with sensitivity, with empathy. Otherwise, in the world today, what is it going about? You know, it's like we say in the world, things are meant to be used and people are meant to be loved. But in the modern society today, people are used to get the things that we love. Right? So important. इसीलिए कहते हैं ना जी, इंसान हर घर में पैदा होता है, इंसानियत कहीं कहीं पैदा होती है. आज हमें इंसानों की नहीं, इंसानियत की जरूरत है. Chuck out this religious stuff if we can't live by humanity. If we cannot, I really do not think it works. Humanity is an absolute crucial aspect. My time's up. I'm going up on stage back again. I'll get back to it in the Q&A. Whatever I left, don't worry. I'll inform you about whatever I was meant to. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
I walked into the audience, so I didn't see the monitor.
Thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're going to get a rousing reception when I ask everyone sitting who's happy right now after hearing him.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we still have some learnings to take from Gopal Das ji, and so I'd like to now invite on stage the chair for this session. And the chairperson is someone who is very dynamic, very multifaceted, an entrepreneur, an actor, and so much more. She wears all these hats very proudly and successfully. Please welcome Gul Panag.
Because you came this way. I was standing there.
My apologies.
You came this way, so I just moved.
I'm quite clear that my perspective on this day has changed after what I witnessed now on stage. Thanks to you, Gopal Das ji, and also thanks to the little chat we had back in the room. And you know, I want to start with what you just said as you closed your address, which is religion, and ultimately how it's, do the mics matter? No, I don't think so. Okay. No, I think it's tuned that side. So you said religion is irrelevant if it can't take you on the path of, humanity. My simple question to you is, what is the relevance of religion in modern life? And also, ultimately, in the pursuit of happiness?
Yes. So, thank you for that question. Am I audible? I don't think I am. All right.
I think you may have to use that
Am I meant to be
mic.
taking this mic up? Am I audible now? Yeah, okay. Brilliant, great. I was speaking at the Google headquarters on the west coast of America, and the projector didn't work there. So the mic not working here is okay. was Google headquarters there. The projector didn't work at Google headquarters for my talk. And I'm like, Google? But thank you for the question again. What is the relevance of religion in contemporary world, in the contemporary times, and particularly in connection with the pursuit of happiness? So that's where I would bring up my second point that I left, this collective responsibility which is together, and then there is an individual responsibility as well. How many of you saw the movie Diwar? Okay, brilliant. How many of you remember the dialogue between Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor, where Amitabh Bachchan talks to Shashi Kapoor and says, "Mere paas bangla hai, gaadi hai, naukar hai, chakar hai, tere paas kya hai?" And we know Shashi Kapoor says, "Mere paas maa hai." 2022, cut to 2022, and the dialogue has changed. Where Amitabh Bachchan says to Shashi Kapoor, "Mere paas Lamborghini hai, mere paas Ferrari hai, mere paas Bentley hai, mere paas Audi hai, tere paas kya hai?" And Shashi Kapoor says, "Mere paas parking space hai." In a city like Mumbai, parking space is probably more expensive than the car itself, I think, you know. And I've often said that whatever car we drive in the city, there's one car that we must all drive in our life. And that car is an acronym. In that car, the C stands for change what you can change. You have problems in your life, you do what you can do to sort those problems out. Like I have this pain in my temples for the last 29 years. I've tried everything, allopathy, homeopathy, naturopathy, even tried Tirupati, nothing worked. Somehow nothing worked, you know. So at the end of the day, and it's not that I don't try now. I still keep giving my best. Anybody suggests to me a modality of treatment, I'll go for it. So number one, the C in the car is to change what you can change. But to be honest, there are things in life that we can't change. Imagine a terminally ill patient at home. The doctor says 2 months to live. Imagine a couple born with a child with special needs. Can't change everything. And therefore, A in the car stands for accept what you cannot change. One of the fundamental aspects of spirituality is acceptance. If I'm not able to accept things, the more I struggle with fighting those things that I can't change, I'm losing my time and my mental energy on things that are beyond me. And therefore, to come to terms with the fact that this is how much I can change, but there are things that I can't, so the second aspect is acceptance. But there are also going to be things that are beyond my acceptance. I can't even accept them. Like I have a friend and she got married, and in 6 months she found out her husband's gay. Now I don't have any problem with anybody's particular sexual orientation. It's a very personal choice. But for her, to be in that relationship was extremely toxic. So then that brings us, she couldn't change it. He's hardwired. She couldn't accept it. That brings us to the third thing, which is the R in the car. And that R in the car is two things. The first aspect of R is to remove yourself from a situation that you can't accept. So for her, she didn't have any other resort, any other way out, but to remove herself out of that relationship. And she did. She did seek a divorce, and the divorce went through. But there are so many situations in our lives where you can't even remove yourself. There are people whom I know are working a job, and the bosses are like bloody toxic. But you can't get another opportunity. You're stuck there. You can't change the boss. He's who he is, or she is who she is. You can't accept them. You can't even remove. And there's so many such examples that could be given of a situation like that. Here, just an example of a toxic boss. And therefore, then the R stands for rise above what you cannot accept. I was in New York, and I was flying from New York to Chicago. Just the day before, me and my friend were walking. I live in Manhattan when I go to New York, and we were walking around, and we went to the One World Observatory, went up, and we watched it all. It was fantastic. We stood down at the massive building, humongous. And the next day when we flew, when the flight took off and gained altitude, I saw this very same building. The building hadn't changed. It was exactly the same. It stayed in the same place. It was as huge. But because I had risen above, it started seeming to be insignificant and small to me
Not because it became insignificant, because I rose above. So change what you can change, accept what you can't change, remove yourself when you can't accept and you can remove, and when you can't even remove, then you have to be there, but learn how to rise above. That is where I feel, whether call it religion, call it spirituality, that is the contribution of spiritual culture in modern times. Because in modern times, we find ourselves in extremely helpless situations at times. Situations where nothing outside is able to help us. And there's no other way but to rise above. And I think that is a key role that spirituality or religion can play. The problem with religion, however, is, religion and faith has boundaries. Whereas when you talk about spirituality, spirituality is universal beyond any boundaries of faith. Of course, like I often say, how many of you watch soccer or football? Any of you here? Okay, brilliant. How many of you are Man United fans here? Okay, brilliant. How many of you know the Man United song by heart? Okay, some of you. Anytime you go to Wembley and watch a football match and Man United wins, all the Man United fans are singing in a massive, tumultuous, rumbling voice. Glory, glory, Man United. Glory, glory, Man United. Glory, glory, Man United. And the Reds go marching on, on, on. Like the whole stadium is like on, on, on. And I'm like, why are you singing a song? You didn't win the match. Why are you singing a song? Why do we sing a song? To express the feeling to the object of our feeling. The object is the team, and I want to tell them how happy I am. I'm not just going to sit there, maun vrat. How does the other person know how I feel? Have any of you ever said to somebody, I love you? I'm not asking who. Love language has changed these days, by the way. Back in the day, people would have like Gita kind of language, Bhagavad Gita kind of language. The guy would tell the girl, मैं शरीर हूँ, तू मेरी आत्मा है, kind of that stuff. Now it's changed. Now the guy says, मैं smartphone हूँ, तू मेरी SIM card है. And the girl says, मेरी ईश्वर से एक ही प्रार्थना है कि तेरा smartphone dual SIM वाला नहीं हो. Oh, sorry about that. But every single time we say, I love you to someone, what is it meant to do? It's just words, right? But those words are meant to carry our feelings to that person. A song to Man United is carrying the feelings of the fan. The words, I love you, are carrying the feelings of that guy or that girl to the other person. Have you ever given an anniversary gift to your spouse or a birthday gift to somebody? It's a thing, a rose or a phone or earrings or a necklace or a watch. But that object is meant to be the medium to express how you feel to the object of your love. Every faith in the world has a set of rituals through which they express how they feel to divinity, divine, God, universal power, whatever we call it. Every faith has that, right? And it's going to differ from culture to culture. Like if I'm in Germany, I would say Dankeschön. If I'm in Lithuania, I would say Labbiachu. If I'm in Tamil Nadu, I would say Rumba Nandri. And if I'm in Italy, I would say Grazie mille. What I'm saying is the same thing, thank you, but it's expressed through a different combination of words. So if it's Islam, it's a different combination of rituals. Hinduism is a different combination of rituals. If it's Jainism, it's a different combination of rituals. Zoroastrianism, it's a different combination of rituals. Judaism, it's a different combination of rituals. But all just different combinations to do the one essential thing, to express what you feel to the object of your feeling, right? Now, when that's what it is meant to be, those rituals, if you look at the word, the spelling of the word spiritual, before the words, in the spelling is the first three letters S-P-I. And S-P-I and then ritual. When the spirit is I want to use whatever I do to express that, then it is spiritual. But when that spirit is gone, then all you have is a set of rituals. And when you only have a set of rituals left, that's what you would loosely call religion today. Loosely called religion today. So there's no difference between spirituality and religion to me. Religion with its spirit existing is the same as spirituality. Religion without its spirit existing is a mere set of rituals. And therefore, when we are talking about those rituals that we use to communicate, rituals that we use to express ourselves, self-expression to divinity, those rituals are going to differ from, faith to faith. And as long as we have this understanding, I think that's where then there's a harmony between religion and spirituality. And that's when both are going to help us, give us that inner fortitude. Both are going to help us take that inner flight in a way that we can rise above. Like I took United Airlines to fly to Chicago from New York, and I saw the same massive building become smaller. And I think that's what we need sometimes, when we can't change things, when we can't accept things, we can't remove ourselves from those situations. We need to start looking at things from a different perspective so that we rise above and it doesn't affect us much. So kind of a thing, yeah, there. Sorry if I took too long.
No. I think that was very well put. It was beautifully articulated, and I think it draws out the very lesson that we all seek, that religion is ultimately about pursuing spirituality, but sometimes we get caught up in the ritual.
Correct.
And reduce religion to just the ritual. That
right.
effectively is what it becomes. I want to go back to car, and I think that's really going to be our last question.
Sure.
So change, acceptance, rise, and remove. Rather, remove yourself, and if you can't, then rise. I want to take you back to exactly 2 years and 2 days ago. It was 23rd of March, 2020,
right,
when the world as we saw it stopped.
Correct.
We had never witnessed a lockdown of that proportion. We didn't know what the word lockdown meant. And we had to accept. We couldn't change it. Right. But I think how we responded is what determined how people were able to deal with what the pandemic threw at us. My question to you, Gopal Das ji, is, in a situation like that, do you think how one responds to something which has been thrust upon us, not just upon us, upon every single individual
right,
in the country, collectively, so it was collectively thrust upon us. Do you think the manner in which we viewed happiness, the pursuit of happiness, acceptance, response, rising above, changed? That is what I would like people to go away with. What has the last 2 years taught, and how can we apply CAR retrospectively to learn from what happened and perhaps be prepared for the future?
Right. Thank you for that brilliant question again. Washington Post once did an interesting experiment with a gentleman called Joshua Bell. Joshua Bell happens to be one of the most renowned violinists on the planet. His violin costs $4 million. That's a hell of a lot of money for a violin. And when Joshua Bell performs and he has concerts in state-of-the-art auditoriums and theaters, tickets like fly, minimum in the range of $200,000, $500,000, $2,000. So Washington Post decided to have Joshua Bell change into like ordinary clothes, just put a hat on, and play violin, some of the masterpiece compositions in the world, in a subway. People were passing by, and this is in the morning. He stood there for about an hour and a half or so, and he had, if I'm not wrong, a total of about 1,500 people walked by, out of which no more than 100 people stood to watch what he was doing. And he put a hat to get money, and a total of, I suppose it was about $32 in his hat. And Washington Post analyzed the whole episode to see what had gone wrong. Yes, the best violinist of the world standing in the subway and playing violin, and best compositions in the history of the world. And Washington Post, they wrote an article saying that everybody in the morning is in such a rush and hush to get to their work. there's no pause. When we don't pause in our life, we miss the most amazing spectacles that are happening around us. Miracles, spectacles, the most amazing things that give us joy are happening right around us. Because we are in such a rush to achieve, to get up there. And there's nothing wrong to get up there. And there's nothing wrong in a rush. But if we're just rushing without a pause, remember, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And it's important that in doing, we should also learn the art of being. So I think what the pandemic did was it allowed us to pause. In a life which was so fast-paced, suddenly it came to a jolting halt. You didn't have a choice but to be at home. You didn't have a choice but to face your inner demons, which we were carefully shoving under the carpet. We didn't have a choice but to start looking at our relationships from a different perspective, because when you are in your space and your spouse is in your space, it all kind of goes on. But when you're 24/7 living together, suddenly you're confronted with things that you never saw in that individual. So I think when we got that opportunity to pause, we got an opportunity to also start facing what was coming our way. We also got an opportunity to look deep at the potential we have to deal with it. We have the potential within us, but when that potential is not used, it just remains there. But a situation like that, a crisis like that, forces people to look at their lives deeply, with introspection, with deep reflection, and to tune into their inner potential to face it. So now, I can tell you a lot of people have learned a lot during this pandemic. The challenge would be to keep it going when things get good again. Right? When things are bad, it's good. It's easier for us to focus on what is meaningful. When things go good, it's very easy to neglect those things that are very meaningful in our life. So I think the challenge would be to keep it going. A lot of people did learn, a lot of people did pause, a lot of people did discover that happiness were little things and not just the big achievements. A lot of people still told me their children were born as the pandemic kids, they were born during the pandemic, and many fathers and mothers have told me that they would never have gotten that opportunity to look at their child grow the way their child grew when they were there. So I think it's a question of keeping ourselves aligned with what we've learned. Like I mentioned at the very outset, Simhavalokana means turning behind like the lion, looking at what we've gone through, looking at what we have overcome to reach here, and carrying those lessons, carrying those reflections into our life in the future as well.
I think that's incredible. So what you're really saying, and I'm saying this to recap for myself and to recap for all those people here, that we've learned an incredible amount, and we often do, not just through, say, a disastrous episode like a global pandemic, right, but we often learn. But when the going is good, we tend to forget those learnings, and that's that right, in turn results in us regressing and undoing the learning that we may have learned. And I think that holds true for everything. Yes. Whether it's a spiritual pursuit, whether it's the pursuit of thinking differently, wiring your brain differently, or it's the pursuit of fitness. I mean, anybody who pursues a fitness regimen knows how quickly it is possible to slide back the moment you think you've arrived. Right. So I think that's really what it's been. It's been fantastic having this conversation, Gopal Das. It's so enlightening. I mean, I cannot begin to put into words the impact of sitting here with you this far apart and witnessing the simple words in which you put forward such powerful ideas. And I do hope that everybody here listening feels the same way, that it's not big, giant concepts or something which is effectively rocket science. It's really simple things that, when explained as well as Gopal Das ji does, I think if we can hold on to these learnings, we'd be happier people. At least we'll be on the path in the pursuit of happiness. Thank you so very much. And thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Can we have a big round of applause, please?
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Absolutely.
Gopal Das ji, do stay with us on the stage as we now invite Shashi Sinha, Chairman of the IPG Group, to present a token of gratitude. May I request Mr. Shashi Sinha, Chairman of the IPG Group, to please join us? And Gul, thank you so very much for articulating those takeaways so well. And Gopal Das ji, you really have inspired us. And I think a lot of us will go away thinking that we need to choose our happiness every single day. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Gul. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now moving on to our next session. We often hear that there is no planet B. There really isn't one. Admittedly, nature is being harmed by humans at a much faster rate than we can actually make up for it. A report by Deloitte last year estimated that left unchecked, climate change will actually pose an even greater threat to lives and livelihoods, and the Indian economy could lose $35 trillion by 2070. Our next guest is someone who has proven that workable solutions to problems around sustainability don't need to cost a bomb. They don't always need deep pockets. They only need the intent, the determination, and innovation. I'd like you to give a very warm reception to Mr. Sonam Wangchuk, innovator and founding director of Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh. Welcome, Mr. Wangchuk, and once again, I'd like to invite the very articulate Gul Panag as the chair for this session.
Hello again. And again, because I've had the privilege to have these one-on-one chats a little bit before our guest finds their way in being face-to-face with you, I'm privy to a little bit more information when we start out, but I'm sure by the time we end the session, you all will be very much on the same page as I am, because I've benefited from an early interaction. A lot of you may not know this, but Mr. Wangchuk had not been to a formal school till the age of 9. By class 9, by age 9, you're in about class 3, 4, depending on the curriculum and the board you follow. Mr. Wangchuk was born and raised in a remote village near Alchi, for those of you who are familiar with Ladakh. Alchi is known for its monastery. It's big on the tourist map. But he was raised in a 5-house village, which is now a 10-house village, and did not go to a school till the age of 9. My first question to you, Mr. Wangchuk, is what kind of an impediment was that when you actually ended up in school? How did you perceive the school? Were you overwhelmed? Were you completely out of sorts? And how did the people view you? Your classmates, your teachers, that who is this creature? Where has he come from?
I'm sure they're thinking of the same right now also. Who's this creature? Where has he come from? मैं देख रहा हूँ आप में से बहुत लोग थोड़े चकित हैं कि ये ड्रेस देखकर, तो मैंने सोचा ये एक संदेश है, एक छोटी मजबूरी भी है, उससे शुरू करूँगा। संदेश ये, जब हम आइडियाज़ ऑफ इंडिया की बात करते हैं तो इंडिया इज़ वेरी डाइवर्स एंड वी शुड सेलिब्रेट दैट डाइवर्सिटी, एंड आई थॉट one way of doing that is to respect and celebrate our dresses from different parts of the country. दूसरी जो कि थोड़ी मजबूरी है, और इस मजबूरी का सवाल करना, स्कूल न जाने पे ज़्यादा सीखते हैं हम, स्कूल जाने पे ये सब छूट जाता है सवाल करना। तो एक मजबूरी क्या थी कि मैं यहाँ बैठा था और मुझे ठंड लग रही थी, और ये बहुत गर्म कपड़े हैं, ऊनी हैं, तो मैं ये पहन के आया। सवाल ये करना चाहता हूँ कि हम बम्बई में लद्दाख क्यों क्रिएट कर रहे हैं हाँ, जहाँ बाहर बहुत अच्छा 29 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड चल रहा है, 30 डिग्री, और हम यहाँ 18 बनाकर बैठे हैं 3 पीस सूट में। तो ये जो आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव है, इसमें हमें मन की, दिल की, मानसिकता की आज़ादी शायद अभी बाकी है, क्योंकि हम अभी भी लंदन के अपने जो हमारे सरकार हैं या बॉसेस हैं, उनके छोड़े गए माहौल को बनाए बैठे हैं। और यही वजह है कि जब 47 डिग्री के दिल्ली या मुंबई में हम 18 डिग्री बनाकर इतना प्रदूषण करते हैं, तो सस्टेनेबिलिटी का सवाल फिर आता है। तो इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा चाहता था कि आप इसे भी ध्यान दें कि हम भारत में हैं और यहाँ पर 26 डिग्री सबसे अच्छी तापमान है। 26 पर अगर हम रखें तो बाहर जाएं तो समस्या नहीं, अंदर आए तो समस्या नहीं। कोई बम्बई के लिए ड्रेस्ड आए, जैसे मैं आया था बम्बई के लिए पहनकर, तो उसे तकलीफ़ ना हो। और वैसे आई एम वेरी हैप्पी एंड thankful that you all have done so much to make a Ladakhi feel at home, even in Mumbai. But please take it as an issue and run a campaign. All offices, all hotels, not less than 26 degrees in our India, which is independent once again from the mindset of colonial past. Yeah?
I'd like to intervene here and say here. Too many of us are freezing in air-conditioned environments, being forced to carry woolens to work. For those of us who operate in dubbing studios, Mr. Wangchuk, or go watch a movie, we're always carrying an additional layer of clothing. So please, for those, the lords of air conditioners and climate control, artificial climate control people, 26 डिग्री पे रखिए तापमान कृपया करके। शायद कोई सुन लेगा यहाँ से और हमारी ये पूरी हो जाएगी। So you were telling us how it felt to be in school for the first time at age 9.
Yes, so when little children are sent to schools that discipline you, rather regiment you to think in boxes and squares, you don't ask questions like, why are we making ourselves uncomfortable, spending so much fuel, so much money, and creating 18 degrees, which is our curse in Ladakh. We wish we had 29 degrees, and you have it, but you create Ladakh in Mumbai. So that questioning is what becomes a victim when you are schooled in the schools of the kind of schools that our children go. So luckily, very luckily, in retrospect, very luckily, I didn't have a school to go till 9 years of age, and that doesn't mean that we don't learn. You know, all these things of the phenomena of nature, which is all in the books, whether it is science or maths, the best school is curiosity, you know, and not your big names in schools and the rich schools or so. As long as you have curiosity, you can learn with or without schools, and that was what I was lucky to have. Thanks, I was nothing special. Every child is gifted with this great software of learning. If you want today's lingo, then the best learning software in the world is curiosity, and that is exactly what we kill in most of our schools. So for me, that was a great liberation not to have to go to a place that kills my curiosity, and the rest happens on its own. When you have curiosity, nothing can stop you from learning. If you don't have that, then the best of schools and best of teachers can't do much. So when I was finally brought to a school, actually it was the end of my happy learning. I had to struggle after that to learn, you know. So you could be learning from swimming in the Indus, climbing up the mountains and the apricot trees, and being on the farm, throwing seeds in the ground to see the roots go down and leaves unfurl without having to memorize L-E-A-F, leaf, and L-E-A-V-E-S, leaves, in an alien language that we don't even speak.
I think you're being also very modest by not sharing that in the very first year that Mr. Wangchuk finally entered formal schooling, he went from class 1 to class 3. in 4 months, because he had learned so much conventionally from the conventional wisdom that comes as part of our indigenous culture. And you know, when we were talking about planting seeds and seeing the leaves come out, that is usually the age, you know, in class 1 and 2 that children are taught to experiment with germination. You put seeds and you put some pani and the green dal sprouts and you learn that. He learned that firsthand in, at their farm and at his village. You know, I want to just go away for 1 second.
Well, I will add to that. The second great opportunity I had by not being in school was this great luxury which very few children get, to learn in mother tongue. So my mother taught me in my mother tongue, and that is a great foundation. आपकी मातृभाषा अगर मजबूत हो तो भाषाएं आपको 6 महीने लगते हैं. मुझे अंग्रेजी सीखने में कोई समय नहीं लगा, हिंदी सीखने में नहीं, फ्रेंच में नहीं. 6 महीने में भाषाएं सीख सका, क्योंकि मेरी मातृभाषा मेरी माँ ने बहुत मजबूत किया. तो मैं आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव पे कहना चाहता हूँ कि ये आज़ादी कब मिलेगी हमें, हमारे बच्चों को.
ये एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण बात मिस्टर वांगचुक ने की है. हमें एक तरीके से सिखाया जाता है कि हमें हमारी जो मदर टंग है, जो हमारी मातृभाषा है, उसमें सीखने की बजाय अंग्रेज़ी में सीखना चाहिए. क्यों आप पंजाब से होकर अंग्रेज़ी में साइंस और मैथ सीख रहे हैं? क्यों आप महाराष्ट्र से होकर, जब आपको मराठी में आपकी सारी बेसिक एजुकेशन होनी चाहिए, क्यों आपको सिखाया जा रहा है? और क्या हो रहा है कि उस लैंग्वेज बैरियर की वजह से बच्चे लैग करते हैं क्लासेस में. एंड आई थिंक मदर टंग जिंदगी में लैग करते हैं. और मदर टंग में जो शिक्षा दी जाती है, अगर उस पर हम जोर दें, बाकी लैंग्वेजेस तो कभी भी एक्वायर की जा सकती हैं. पर क्यों हम एक हाइब्रिड मॉडल क्रिएट करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि अपनी लैंग्वेज को भी सीख लें, फिर बीच बीच में इंग्लिश में भी कर लें, फिर उन दोनों को हम मैरी करने के चक्कर में कहीं पिछड़ जाते हैं. सो आई थिंक इट्स अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट यू मेड देयर, कि जो हमारी खुद की ज़ुबान है वो हमें नेचुरली आती है, उसमें सीखना बहुत आसान है हमारे लिए, चाहे वो भूगोल हो, चाहे वो इतिहास हो, चाहे वो साइंस हो, जो भी हो. और जब हम उसे अप्लाई करते हैं एक दूसरी लैंग्वेज में, वो लर्निंग प्रोसेस शायद स्लो हो जाता है. यू नो, Mr. Wangchuk and I have a small thing in common. इन्होंने अपनी काफ़ी फॉर्मल एजुकेशन जब इन्होंने शुरू की थी 9 साल की उम्र से, केंद्र विद्यालयों में की है. मेरी भी काफ़ी एजुकेशन केंद्र विद्यालय में हुई है. All KV students, anybody here, can you put your hands up? Okay, so very few, but केंद्र विद्यालय students. And मैंने 2 साल बिताए केंद्र विद्यालय लेह में, लद्दाख में. और उस वक्त जब मैं वहाँ पढ़ रही थी, मेरे फादर आर्मी में थे, मुझे लद्दाख में बहुत घूमने का मौका मिला. और एक जो हमारी क्वार्टरली एक्सकर्जन हुआ करती थी, वो नुब्रा जाने की हुआ करती थी, खारदुंगला पास को क्रॉस करके नुब्रा जाने की. एंड वी वर टॉकिंग येस्टरडे, और इन्होंने मुझे एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग बात बताई जिसका ध्यान जो मेरे दिमाग में भी नहीं आ रही थी. और वो ये कि जब आप खारदुंगला क्रॉस करते हैं नुब्रा में डिसेंड करने के लिए, दे यूज्ड टू बी अ मेटल ब्रिज connecting 2 ends of a glacier 20 years ago. I mean, I began to go to Ladakh as a tourist sometime 20 years ago, every year, after having, of course, lived there as a child. And वो जो bridge आज भी है, लेकिन it no longer connects 2 parts of a glacier. It's not even water anymore. There is nothing. It's just rubble and leftover eroded track of the glacier, and that's just in 20 years. Khardungla Pass, something we're all familiar with, it's the highest motorable pass in the world, etc., etc., etc. But climate change is real, and it's happening as we speak, and we were talking about this yesterday. And in fact, it was evidenced for the first time by the rest of the public in 2010, when Ladakh saw its first flash floods. Or what we thought were the first flash floods, and of course Mr. Wangchuk will tell us, it neither was the first flash flood, nor was it the last, and how it has now started a cycle of floods, cloudbursts and floods followed by droughts. So tell us about how this cycle has suddenly come out of nowhere, and how this, when you were talking to elders in your village, there was no memory of a cloudburst like this.
So while we sit in an 18-degree hall in 30 or 40-degree Mumbai, Or 2 days ago, I was in Mongolia. It was minus 18 outside. It's not just us here. And I was sweating in the hotel at 27 degrees. Yeah? I don't know why we overdo, why Mongolia can't be happy with plus 18 of Mumbai, and Mumbai can't be happy with plus 27 of Mongolia. If they're happy there, why can't we be? I mean, I start doubting if human beings are rational animals. Maybe only the rational part needs to be taken off. The rest is fine. So, while we are doing this kind of ayashi, up there in places like Ladakh, glaciers are going away, and they are not going quietly. They are releasing, unleashing flash floods that wash away households, villages, farmlands. And yes, 2010 is what you may have heard, because roughly 1,000 lives were lost in that, and half of Leh was washed away. But I saw the first one in 2006, when I went and volunteered in this village called Phyang, where we have our alternative university now. Just as a volunteer, many families had lost their houses, farmlands, and even people. I asked, while helping them, an elder person, when was the last flash flood like this you have seen? And he started thinking and said, I have never seen one. I've only heard of such things from my ancestors or elders. And you know what? The next one was 2010. 4 years later, much bigger. And the next one was 2012. The next one was 2015. Another 2017. So the frequency has increased so much. And each of these leaves drought to follow, because as all the water goes away, and when it's flushed away, it takes with it the fines in the mountains, in soil, which absorbs, which are like sponges, and any vegetation, and therefore even less capacity to absorb, and therefore even smaller rains. It doesn't take a rain as big as the first one to cause the next flash flood. So that's happening there, while this is happening here. There's some connection. So that's why I'm appealing to you all to please live simply in the big cities so that we in the mountains may simply live.
I think that hits hard, that we should live simply in the cities so that the folks in the mountains who are actually at the forefront of climate change can just live. I think that really hurts you to the bone to realize that what we do could be impacting the lives of people who have nothing to do with these choices. Mr. Wangchuk, you mentioned how the education system is conditioned to taking away conditions children by taking away their curiosity. And how when you first entered formal education, you found it was the end of your happy learning and your happy curiosity. And then you went ahead, you changed many Kendra Vidyalayas in various parts of Jammu and Kashmir, and then eventually pursued your engineering, and then you decided to come back and change what you thought was wrong with the education system. What did you do? What did you come back and do? And what motivated you to do that? I mean, it's so easy to pursue brighter careers and, like all of your colleagues from engineering college, go to the US and pursue big dreams. What did you do differently, and what was your inflection point which made you make a different choice in life?
Again, my childhood without schools is to blame. Yeah? Schools teach you so many subjects, but my childhood with my mother and the villagers on the farmland taught me not just questioning these phenomena of nature, but also empathy. From my mother, I learned this valuable asset that schools don't teach. Schools teach you to compete and, tread over others. But my village, my ancestors, my grandmother, through her stories, taught me to think about others and not just about self. Yeah? So this is to blame. Because of this, when I was doing my engineering, a happy accident, I would say, happened, and which was that I had to fend for myself. I had to support my own engineering. And to do that, I decided not to take from my home. They were well off, but I decided not to and do it myself. And to do that, I had to do something. The only thing I could do was to teach. And therefore, I started teaching students in Ladakh in the vacations from my engineering college. And during that, I came face to face with the disastrous education system. Perfectly bright Ladakhi children were failing at the rate of 95% every year in their 10th grade exams, which are like the passport to future. And nobody was questioning. They were all blaming the children. You're bad children. And I could see firsthand, they were so bright, so enthusiastic, so humble. What more could you ask from children? So there was something, I said, in the system. Because when 95% of the products fail in a car factory or a software firm, then it is the system that should be looked into. So that made me think that in life, it's not just about what I need, but also about what needs me. Yeah? And these children needed me more than what I needed. My friends were going to the Silicon Valley and Bangalore after their engineering. I decided to go back to Ladakh and see if I can help them and see if I can change this dismal system. So that empathy, which is missing perhaps in our schools, to do it for humanity is what I would say made me decide to go back and, yeah.
And I think it's this empathy that you want everybody to have to be able to then eventually make sustainable choices. You're not making sustainable choices just for yourself. You're ultimately making sustainable choices so that you can help those who don't directly partake in those choices. Like, again and again, choices made in big cities are impacting the lives of people in the mountains.
Exactly. Not only personal choices, but people when they choose their professions or even businesses. It should be out of empathy. And this will help their businesses also. Businesses or ideas or startups that are rooted on empathetic understanding of people and actually solves a problem are going to be the best businesses even in their financial bottom line, you know. So this is missing. And that's why the foundation of, whether it is social or business entrepreneurship or any choices, if it is empathy, finally it makes everybody else happy, and that happiness then, you can't escape.
So I in fact go as far as saying that empathy is the foundation of sustainability. Without empathy, there can be no sustainability.
Exactly. It is unempathetic, insensitive, profit alone oriented growth that has landed us in this soup. So to come out of it, we have to choose different inputs, ingredients in our children. And that's where education comes. I mean, Kailash ji was talking about freedom for the rural children who are in very bad shape. But the urban children are in no better shape. Actually, it might be physical challenges that the rural children are facing, but the urban children are also facing a very poor education system that lands them in this kind of situation. I mean, I would consider a tribal child, sentinels they're called, in Andaman, perhaps much more lucky if we in the big cities manage to create viruses that can wipe out the whole civilization or nuke each other, as is starting to happen. You would wonder which was better for the human beings and the planet, the tribal in Andamans or in Ladakh, or the so-called very modern, very highly schooled, I won't even say educated, child in a big city. So,
Your intervention in the schooling system led to a pass percentage of 75% from when failure was at 90%. And before I ask you the next question, Mr. Wangchuk, the failure at 90%, and this is a personal question, I mean, it comes from my own curiosity. Was that 90% failure on account of not being taught in the native language? Because I noticed there was a huge barrier in Kendriya Vidyalaya with my Ladakhi classmates who were being forced to study in Hindi or in English when they probably understood those concepts in Ladakhi very well.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. As I said, the children were very bright and enthusiastic. That's what you need, as ingredients. But they would fail. And I also wondered why they were failing. And then very soon I realized that nothing was their, playing field. They were made to play on a field that they didn't even understand. To begin with, in a language like Urdu, they would be taught at the age of 6 when they would have spoken only Ladakhi at home. And then suddenly in 8th grade, everything would turn into English. So such a nightmare of languages that only, if you could design for failure, you couldn't come up with a better design. And then what you studied in those alien languages was even more surprising. So in this -20, -30 Ladakhi classroom, where children are shivering, they would be memorizing A for apple, B for ball, that's fine, but F for fan, shivering and F for fan, and a child would ask, but what is this, sir? And the teacher would scratch his head and say, I don't know, I have never seen one, but I'm told it keeps you cold and cool. And the children, why would anybody need to be colder than we are feeling? So this is symbol of what the system was, thoughtless, insensitive, blanket application of things that are irrelevant to the lives. And we spend 15 to 16 years of our precious human life in those schools. So aren't you happy I didn't have one to go?
I'm actually jealous that I did not also have the same joy of not going to school till class, till class 3 and age 9. So coming back to when you came back after you finished your engineering degree, you set up these interesting learning centers. And I was reading, and of course, when we exchanged notes yesterday, I was blown away by your ice stupa. An ice stupa as tall as 100 feet. 100 feet is effectively 9 stories. I mean, 8 to 9 stories, depending on how low your ceiling is. And how you managed to make those ice stupas, and they started from a requirement of trying to find water during, that's one of the smaller ones.
Yeah, smaller.
And it started from trying to solve a local problem of growing in the month of May, when spring finally arrives in Ladakh, and there not being enough water. From there being so much water earlier by way of ice and snow, to there being zero, well, not zero, but very, very little water for cultivation by the time you reach May. And how you and your team set about trying to fix that. Do you want to tell us about that? I mean, where did the idea come from? How did you build these? Yes. And how did they survive till May? May is very, very warm in Ladakh. The sun is very bright and everything else melts. And here's the interesting thing about Ladakh. It can snow there, and in 3 days, the snow just goes away because the sun is strong. And yet, you've had these stupas last up till June.
Yeah, we can change some other pictures.
Do we have more images of these?
There are various ways. Okay. So it's...
I think they'll come.
More about applying what is in the textbooks to solve local challenges. Yeah? The spirit is about that, rather than, it can be water, it can be cold winters, it can be farming in a desert. But the school that we started finally, after helping children pass better in the government schools, by the way, yes, 95% became 75% success. At that point, we said, let's take care of the failures who still fail in the system. And together with them at this school that we created, we started applying what is in the textbooks to solve problems. And that's the best practical that you can have in schools. So one of our problems as glaciers are melting away is that in springtime, there's shortage of water. That's the bottleneck, you know. After that, in July, you have floods even. You have too much water when all the glaciers melt. But in spring, there's shortage of water. Yet in winter, there's some stream still flowing in winter. But that's when people don't need water, so what's the use? So the idea was to freeze the water when it is not used in January, February, and keep it frozen till May, June. Now that's easier said than done because all the ice is gone by March end. So this is application of middle school geometry. In geometry, if you remember, there are shapes that have low surface area for the given volume. Shapes like, if you remember, spheres, hemispheres, cones. So we said, if we make our ice not flat, but in conical forms, then it will have low surface area for the sun to melt. Sun demands surface area. We don't give it. But farmers don't care about surface area. They want volume. So this has high volume, low surface area. Let's freeze it in this shape and then see how long it lasts. Now the next problem was, how do you make it 10 stories, 12 stories tall and without pumps? We didn't have resources nor the power in the mountains. But you learn to appreciate what you have and not mourn what you don't. We don't have money, we don't have pumps or power, but we have gravity because mountains are all slopes and slope means gravity. So use that as a resource. All it takes is put a pipe upstream, bring it down, and as you might remember, water always maintains its level. That's how masons do the leveling. So the water at inlet upslope and the water at outlet downstream will want to go to the same level. So there will be pressure in the pipe without power, without pollution. So to that, if you put a fountain, then it sprays water into the -20 air, which takes away its heat. And that heat, which makes water into solid state or ice, if you remember your high school science, is called latent heat. So as it loses its latent heat mid-air, it comes down and falls naturally in the shape of a cone. Now there, it didn't stop there. This is a prototype of an innovation that only an engineer could love. You know? In America, they say, he has a face only a mother could love. Means very ugly, huh? So this is a shape only an engineer could love. So we wanted to make it connect to the local people. So we said innovation should not stop in labs. It should link to society. And we saw conical white structures dotting the landscape of Ladakh, and you would remember, and they are called stupas or chortens. So we said, why not call it an ice stupa? So make a connect between the lab and the homes. And immediately it clicked. One of the most respected spiritual leaders of Ladakh, who is also the UN ambassador for mountain partnerships, His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche, immediately took the idea and spread it, and it became a thing that people felt was from their traditions. So this was this blending of technology and tradition that I'm more proud of than just the conical structure that saves 10 million liters of water.
I think we don't have the image we would like to show you here, which is essentially a really, really tall ice stupa with prayer flags all over, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I wish we could have showed you that, but
it is there. So the prayer flags, we then to position it. Now here you put some marketing and branding into traditional societies. So we wanted to position it like stupas, and stupas often have prayer flags on them. So we put prayer flags. I wish they could show the picture of that. There are several pictures I gave you. So prayer flags, and we said to the villagers, so if we put the prayer flags, the ice will last longer in the summer. And we were not completely lying, because it's not a divine force that would do it, but partial shading and partial windbreak in the warm spring time would actually have an effect, but we were doing it on the first one to position it like one of the stupas. So that way it became an ice stupa, and I was most touched when I saw very elderly ladies prostrating in front of the ice stupas as a savior of not as much the divine, but of the climate change challenge.
And of course, giving precious water for the crop. Another innovation that I want to talk about quickly is how you are heating. So those of you who've traveled to Ladakh in winter, temperatures drop to -20, -30 even. And heating inside is a function of these very traditional, inefficient, archaic things called bukharis, which are also very, very dangerous. I mean, there are lots of fire incidents as a result of the kerosene bukhari or the wooden bukhari. And how you used, again, not engineering level science, but high school level science to heat. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yes, so another application of what is in the textbooks that bothers you in the exams, but they could do more than just bother you in the exams, was the chapter on heat in 9th grade. You know, it has conduction, convection, radiation, if you remember. Applying those and the plenty of sunshine that Ladakh has, we said, why only mourn about Ladakh not having trees on the mountains, oil in the ground? That's what most people used to do. Where are we? We don't even have oil in the ground to heat, nor trees on the mountains. But we said, how about the sun? We have more than anybody else on the planet, perhaps. 300 sunshine days. So why not make the most of it? And sure enough, using houses that would orient, first of all, towards the sun, the winter sun, which takes a little bit of geography from their textbooks, which talks about where the sun is in the winter on the northern hemisphere, which is the southern sky. So if you have really a grasp of your geography, it's a no-brainer to orient your house to the south, so that in winter it captures all the sun. And capture it does in glass facade, but it would overheat. So you have to put something that will store the water till night. So you put a black wall, and black, you read in your books, is an absorber of energy. So it absorbs best. And then you put water in the walls, which has very high specific heat. Yeah? Those of you who remember your science. So water is an amazing battery. When it comes to heat, you don't need these lead acid, lithium ion, and all such mumbo jumbo. You need just water, which is the best battery you can have, and naturally so, and doesn't cause any pollution or anything. So you use water battery walls on the south that are put in black painted containers, and the sun hits that wall, absorbed by the water. It's kept till night, which is when you have cold. So day is fine. So at night, these walls radiate. The next, in heat, radiation comes. Similarly, in the day, convection of air happens, so that it takes the warmth of the black walls and delivers it to the room with air moving in currents, which is convection. So just simply using them, and of course some very meticulous designing and planning, gives you a house that stays at +18 to +25, 90% of the times in -20 Ladakh. Yeah? That's possible.
It's time for my last question, but I do have a supplementary question to the last question. My last question is, what can the rest of India, I mean, we've talked about how empathy is critical to even contemplating sustainability. You have to first be empathetic and actively cultivate empathy, because it's no longer our default setting. And you have to actively cultivate empathy in order to start moving on the path to sustainability. And Ladakh has showed us the way in terms of how we can, in small bits, work around climate change and find ways through innovations like the ones you talked about to do that. So is there something India can learn from Ladakh, not just because of the resilience of the people for how they live and the extreme temperatures they have to face, but in terms of what they're doing for sustainability and how India can look forward in the next 25 years as we march towards 100 years of independence? What can we learn from Ladakh? And my supplementary question is, I'm sure everybody in this room knows that Amir Khan's character in Three Idiots, when he goes back to Ladakh, is actually based on Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. So how many people have seen Three Idiots here? So when Amir Khan cannot be reached and he's suddenly dropped off the radar, he's in Ladakh building these incredible inventions. That is the character inspired by the actual work that Mr. Wangchuk has done. So, on to my real question now. How did that make you feel? But more importantly, what can Ladakh teach the rest of India as we look forward?
First of all, your last question, it made me feel very sad that people have to associate a person to a film character to understand them. And I'm sure there are so many wonderful people in your neighborhood. You will wait for some film to come out to celebrate them, to support them, and to understand them. So please don't do that. Please don't do that. Secondly, what India or the world can learn from Ladakh. What really saddens me when I come to big cities in India or elsewhere, but more so in India actually, is the gap between rich and poor. You know, we have perhaps the richest people in the world, and yet in the neighborhood we have people who are perhaps worse off than in any part of the world. I can't understand how we can hold our heads high when our younger sisters and brothers are in the gutters. How can we sleep at night? So, nation is an extension of a family. How can a brother or a sister be proud of his wealth or her wealth when her very younger sister is being sold? We cannot. And therefore, perhaps we can learn that it doesn't take all this wealth to make us happy. In Ladakh, we don't have very rich, we don't have very poor, we have no beggars, we have no billionaires. And that's very important for a nation to be a happy nation. And mind you, when I say things like we should have an equitable society, etc., people think, okay, this is social mumbo jumbo. It doesn't work. But I want to tell you in your own terms, to the industrialists and to the big businessmen, in your own economics, there's a theory called the law of diminishing returns in economics, yeah? Which says that when you buy your first pair of shoes, you get 100% satisfaction. Okay? Amazing. Because without those pair of shoes, you would be really suffering. But when you get your second pair of shoes, the satisfaction is diminishing. By the 10th and the 20th and the 40th pair of shoes, you hardly get any satisfaction, but you're just spending away buying and hoarding those and actually making a whole industry go around and belching smoke. And every time you take that pair of shoes from the showroom, another truck comes, delivers, another factory goes and causes what the planet has become. Now, that's law of diminishing returns. So therefore, you don't even get the value for your money. Now, what I want to add to that, and that could be a learning from Ladakh, is that how about being rich, buying that 30th and 40th pair of shoes still, but not for yourself, For the rest of our brothers and sisters who are running around without pairs of shoes, then you get that 440,000% satisfaction. And that's when India will become a truly liberated, equal nation. Secondly, what Ladakh can teach and what Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and I hold it close to my heart, is that for a human being, the greatest achievement is not fulfilling 1,000 desires, which is what we are chasing, taking after our masters in London and New York. We are chasing to fulfill our 1,000th desire, only to realize that it's only the beginning. There are more and more and more. So Buddha said, for a man, it is a greater achievement to conquer a single desire than to fulfill 1,000 desires. So therefore, this philosophy will make India Vishwaguru, not chasing them and fulfilling our 1,001st desire. So this, I would say. And finally, as I started, please live simply in the big cities so we can simply live in the mountains. We started a movement, a campaign, to appeal to young people in the cities who are not happy with preachings and lectures and so on. We made a crowdfunding site called ilivesimply.org. This is a crowdfunding site where you don't have to part with your money, but it can give the planet more than what money can do. Money can't solve much, but if you make a pledge and contribute a pledge to change your lifestyle, for example, to turn your AC thermostat up to 26 degrees, or to walk instead of your car where possible, or to bicycle, or to take trains instead of aeroplanes, or to plant trees, then it converts it into equivalent dollars. And you can see how much you are contributing. So I want to be a billionaire in that kind of dollars. And help me do that. And
thank you so much for those wonderful thoughts. And thank you all for being such an outstanding audience. Can we have a big round of applause, please,
thank you.
for Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wangchuk. We'll request you to please remain on stage as I now invite Megha Tata, Managing Director at Discovery, to present you with a small token of our gratitude. This has been such a thought-provoking session. There is an incredible amount that we can learn from Mr. Wangchuk, but I think if we go away being a little bit more humble like him today and being a little bit more empathetic like him today, I think it would be our biggest learning of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. Thank you very much, Megha. Thank you, Mr. Wangchuk and Gul, for once again conducting a very thought-provoking session. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder for you all that later in the day we have several more thought-provoking and engaging sessions coming up. For example, actress Taapsee Pannu, Infosys founder Mr. Narayan Murthy, and Mr. Nitin Gadkari, the Minister of Road Transport and Highways, are some of our other esteemed guests who will be addressing us through the course of the day. And now, as we move on to our next session, just a quick observation. If you simply look at the sheer number of unicorns in India right now, we may actually forget they are supposed to be mythical creatures, but we seem to have them in abundance here in India. Indian startups have truly become the nucleus of innovation across sectors. India, of course, is also home to one of some of the world's oldest legacy businesses, where generation after generation has been part of the country's economic progress and prosperity. Now, whether it is startups or legacy businesses, both are so critical for the next chapter of India's economic advances. This session explores these contributions much further in detail. I'd first like to invite our moderator for this session, senior journalist Chetan Sharma. And we are going to be joined by two very, very special guests. Please welcome Harsha Vardhan Agarwal, Vice Chairman and Managing Director Designate, Imami Limited. Welcome, Mr. Agarwal. And also joining us is Kulin Shah, co-founder at Onsurety. Welcome, gentlemen.
Firstly, thank you for putting the third chair. Else I thought I'd have to stand up for 40 minutes. Thank you for the applause. Well, I always insist that there should be an applause before you start your act. You never know what's going to happen after it. I require another round of applause. And that's for the ABP Network. Simply because it requires the might, the power, the purpose, and the presence of an organization like ABP to rein in an August house in the month of March. One of the typical things of being on a stage like this is that people only talk about the good things that you do. They forget about a lot of the not so good things that you have to go through before coming to the good things. And that's the most relevant part of being an entrepreneur. The reason why only 2 out of 100 entrepreneurs actually succeed. So from the spirituality of the monk to the spirited people who are here today in terms of an enterprise. Harsha Agarwal of Imami and Kulin Shah of Onsurety. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Well, the first things first, and that's your mic. I'll give you a minute, each of you, to introduce your organizations. Starting with you, Harsha.
Thanks, Chetan. I am Harsha Vardhan Agarwal from Imami. Imami was started by 2 friends, my father, Mr. Radheshyam Agarwal, and his childhood friend, Mr. R.S. Goenka, in the late 70s. You know, when maybe entrepreneurship was not so much looked upon as they were in job, they started this company. And now Imami is a well-diversified conglomerate with its interest in FMCG, edible oil, hospital, paper, retail, and real estate. I am involved in the FMCG part of the business and take care of the family interest there. The FMCG business, Imami Limited, consists of some of the leading brands like Jhandu, Fair and Handsome, Navratna, Boro Plus, Kesh King, Fast Relief. I'm very happy to be part of this August gathering and look forward for this interesting chat. Thank you.
We look forward to as well. What about you, Colleen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Shah. First of all, I would like to ask all of you present out here, I'm sure you guys work with some or the other organization or you're running an organization. How many of you do you know that you have a healthcare program that's given by your organization? Can you please raise your hand? And how many of you actually remember who your partner is? I don't see any fingers going up except for 1 or 2 people. And this is the problem that we are solving today. Today, Indian SMEs are not empowered when it comes to providing employee health benefits. And we are on a mission to democratize health benefits for the 63 million SMEs that are there in India today. We are on Surety, and on Surety is India's first and only self-serve employee healthcare benefit platform, which is now providing a comprehensive health benefit suite, including healthcare services and insurance, all in one small monthly subscription, like an OTC platform. And we work with about 2,000 companies today.
So basically, by asking that question, you've ensured that you have about 200 customers.
Yes, that's us.
All right. So how old is your organization, Harsh?
So we started in around early 70s, so somewhere around 45 years is what I would say.
45 years. Yeah. So you're 45 years old. What about you?
We are a COVID baby. We started the company in May of 2020.
So you're 2 years old. I just want to get the record straight. They both look the same age. But that having been said, this is an enterprise which is 45 years old, and that's an enterprise which is 2 years old, which really will be the genesis of our talk for today. Harsh, are you comfortable? Yeah. Well, that's the problem. The problem with the legacy is that they are comfortable. They're not supposed to be comfortable, yet they're comfortable simply because there seems to be, in the perception, a sense of entitlement, a sense of having somebody else having done the hard work and you being a beneficiary of that. That's what brings in the comfort. वो कहते हैं ना कि ये बड़े लोग हैं, इनको क्या दिक्कत हो सकती है, लेकिन शायद बड़े लोगों को दिक्कतें भी बड़ी होती हैं. What's your take on that?
See, yes, I totally agree with you. No organization, or I would say nobody as leaders, should enter into complacency. Because I think the times are changing, consumer needs are changing, and from that perspective, no organization can only remain in its past glory. I think it's very important for each of them to understand, to evaluate what is going to happen in future, how to embrace them, how to change, how to adapt. And in our organization, I think this motto is very clear that, again, we can't stay with the past. We always have to move forward. We always have to look forward towards the future. And I believe, adaptability is the most important theme, which I think companies like us who have been there for many years, who cannot just believe that, yes, now we are successful or now we are having good profit and hence we can continue or this situation is going to continue. So how do you push adaptability and change as an agenda in your company is something, which we do to ensure that, yes, though we are comfortable, but at the same time we are agile and we are changing to the needs of the time.
I noticed, Kulin, you've been a very patient listener to what Harsh was saying. Yet, perhaps one gathers that patience is not the best virtue in case of a startup. I mean, they often say that if you actually become patient in a startup, you become a patient, right? Because you need a sense of unacceptance, a sense of energy all the time. You need that impatience to be able to keep doing things. Is that true?
Absolutely, right. So, the topic that we are talking about, been thinking about it, and if you go to see, legacy actually is the mother of disruption, right? When actually someone gets impatient, someone starts questioning that, why are we doing the way we are doing? Because most of the time we become numb, right? we become numb to norms. We become numb to the way we are doing things. We become numb to saying that this is okay, right? And I think that's the very cause where, say startups come in, or no, and I'm not saying only startups disrupt. I'm saying even big companies will disrupt, right? Because they want to be more than what they are already, right? And I think that's where I think being impatient is for the first time a good virtue to have, right? And this is where we've started feeling that even in an organization like ours, right, where insurance has been a 100-year-old or a 200-year-old concept, health has been a very, very old concept. I don't know how to date it back also. But how do you kind of, put these things together and tell people that there is more to what you're already doing today? So I think, yes, impatience is something that drives, disruption and keeps fueling it. And every now and then you'll start seeing things being done differently.
It's also something that drives a television anchor, because I've got to cover 42 years of experience in 29 minutes. So obviously I have a time on hand. So I'm going to do this on a point basis, try to pick up aspects and elements. So the second element that comes to mind is a word called flexibility. Over your experience, Harsh, do you feel that in a legacy brand, flexibility is compromised? Because you have a system in place, you have people in place, you have a process in place. While that's good to have it in place, but sometimes it needs to be displaced. And that's where flexibility perhaps is warranted, and you may feel yourself short of it. Do you agree?
Yes, Chetan, I think to an extent, yes. For a larger organization, a lot of things are at risk as well. And hence that fear of failure or doing something wrong which has a larger impact on the organization, which reduces the flexibility. And hence, it is important that without giving up flexibility, how organizations can adapt again to this changing need. So it's not that, in a larger organization, the processes are not needed. I think processes are very much needed for every organization. And the flexibility is not there, or it is restrained because of the processes which are there. But at the same time, you have to understand the needs, and then maybe why don't you adapt to it in maybe having a kind of a separate team system where if flexibility is what is needed, agility is what is needed, then you give that to those teams to ensure that the overall goals, the objectives to grow are met.
On the other side of this, Colleen, you don't have a problem of flexibility. You're just 2 years young. But you could have the problem of over-flexibility, which essentially means at some level you may compromise on discipline. You may compromise on consistency, which is important. Just, there is this aspect that you need to change for the sake of changing at times. That's a pressure that comes to a lot of startups. And that's where over-flexibility perhaps becomes a nemesis. Have you ever faced that?
Actually, no, right? I think flexibility, agility is something that we thrive upon, right? And there's nothing like, and honestly, there's nothing like over-flexibility, because you're always continuously experimenting, right? Yes, what gets sometimes, over by oversight is processes, right? Because you're so much challenging things all the time, right? That you want to kind of keep doing things in a different way. I think the biggest pressure that we would have today is not failure, but the biggest pressure would be, are we doing enough to kind of scale our product, right? I think with Harsh's organization, I think scale is not even a question, right? Harsh would just launch a product, and I'm telling you there will be a line of people who are ready to buy it. But I think that's where startups need so much of flexibility, right? We need to keep doing testing, right? What's working, what's not working, what's working, what's not working. Keep optimizing, and then kind of, keep going out there and making sure that we have the right formula. And So yeah, over flexibility, no. Flexibility is a boon for us because, to be honest, we have nothing to lose, right? The only thing we have to lose is our customers' trust. And that is the place where we don't compromise on flexibility. That's the place that is sacrosanct for us. Customer experience, right? Our brand promise to the customers, right? That is where we don't show any kind of flexibility, any kind of a compromise. But I think everything that is peripheral, which means that, hey, I need to go ahead and do something extra, right? Which means that if there is a customer who needs, and if a team member is not there, do I need to go? That's okay, right? We would land up at the place where the customer is and, help him out, right? So, yeah.
It's really interesting because both of you mentioned the word fear, both of you mentioned the word failure, which perhaps is a lead-in for my next question. And that is this very aspect, Harsh, for you, the baggage aspect. Your decisions at times could emanate from preventing failure, the fear of failure. His decisions would come purely from the need to succeed, which allows him the ability to be slightly more futuristic, which allows you the ability to be slightly more conservative. But has it ever impacted your decisions? Do you feel that somewhere down the line, you need a little bit more of freedom?
Yes, I would say yes, that fear of failure is always there. But at the same time, I think for any organization, they need to understand and learn that only with failure you learn. So in fact, what we push through in our company also now is fail, learn with it, and try again, and that perseverance is very, very important.
And don't repeat it.
Yes, of course, you cannot repeat the mistakes. But yes, you cannot be scared of, that, yes, since it might fail and hence I will not try it. And hence, even in our company, there are few things where, like consumer trust is very, very important. So there, how do we protect that, but at the same time, how do we try newer things? How do we ensure that we are learning in the process of trying new things and learning through it? I think that is very important for us.
I think that's a brilliant, observation, and that is what, President Kalam had said, that FAIL is an acronym for the first attempt in learning. You've got to continue how to learn. Now, but he has a problem perhaps with the fear of failure and baggage. You don't have that problem. But you could have the problem of inexperience. Because experience has a huge cost attached to it. The cost of learning, which could be very prohibitive, which could actually run you out of business. Do you ever fear that? The possibility of having the cost of experience being just too high?
Absolutely, right? So all of us, and especially, younger organizations, I would just not say startups because, then I'm not isolating any new organization or any new business which is coming up, right? Any new business that is being set up, right, is always on a tightrope, right? You have limited resources, you have limited time, and you have limited, runway. And now, if you are going to, not act fast, then you are definitely doomed. Because you need to keep reacting, you need to keep optimizing, you need to keep, keep learning as fast as you can. And I think that is a fear that I would sleep every day in the night with, saying that, hey, you know what, how can I learn more tomorrow? If I want to learn more tomorrow, then what are the things that I need to do extra tomorrow so that I can learn faster, right? What is the team that I need to build that can bring in that experience that I don't have or my other co-founder does not have? Can we kind of start plugging those inexperiences, right, with the right experience? And that experience can come either self-experience, where we kind of keep learning, or getting the right people on board. So yes, inexperience or not knowing, not seeing an entire business cycle sometimes is something that, is a reality.
It's interesting how we've covered a lot of F-letter words, right? We started with flexibility, we went on to fear, we went on to the futuristic part, And I'm going to choose one more, which is very critical in terms of a differentiation often of a legacy and a newbie. And that F-letter word is the word family. By and large, you mentioned the word friend, which also becomes family. That your organization started off with 2 friends. And that's the way a lot of organizations start off. Not necessarily professionals, but 2 friends. It's a relationship or a family, an enterprise. But if you look at the history of legacies, family organizations rarely run beyond generation 4, 3 or 4, and they just dissolve. And the reason for that, perhaps, and I'm hazarding a guess out here, is that a family business involves decisions beyond commercial sense, beyond financial logic. It hinges a lot on emotion. An emotion which involves pride, ego, envy, legacy, divisiveness, and that's in many ways what becomes a huge challenge or an impediment. Frankly, have you faced this?
See, what I would say globally, if we see a very large percentage of the overall business ownership is with the families and many successful companies. I think what the success lies behind is that you need to very clearly differentiate between ownership and management. And I think we have been fortunate enough that from the very beginning, our parents, our family have believed in that, where just being owners, we don't believe that we have the right to manage the company and bring in many of the challenges which you were mentioning into the whole scheme of things. So how do you differentiate between the ownership and management is something, if you are able to adapt, then there are a lot of advantages of having the right mix of professionalism along with the ownership or the family ownership. Many times the risks which maybe an owner can take, the professional might not be able to take. And hence, that the right balance of the professional and the ownership sometimes can, I would say, grow the business much faster and help the business grow. But yes, I think the important part is to keep these two separate, the ownership and the management.
Which is far easier than done. But thank you for highlighting that aspect. I think it's a very noble thought, but in practicality, we've seen so many business families actually dissolve, dissolve, and even disintegrate because of that. Now, you mentioned a little while earlier, Colleen, about the team playing aspect, the need of the right team. And if you look at enterprises across the globe, the biggest challenge for a new company, and I happen to own one myself, is to build that right team. And the reason for that is the absence of trust. And that's where perhaps sometimes you want family to be there. So at one age, family becomes a dissonating factor because of that emotions. On the other hand, the family aspect brings in a trust, an inane trust, brings in a bond, which at times may not be experienced by the newbie organization. So do you think that that somewhere down the line is a disadvantage? Because building the right team, as you would agree, it's not about having the right resources as much as building the right team, which is going to see you through.
Absolutely. I think for any new organization, building the right team is the path to success, because everything is a function of the people who are there in the organization, right? People create processes, people create products, people create profitability, right? And hence having the right people in the organization is one of the biggest challenge, that we face day in and day out when we are interviewing, when we're having a discussion, be it a person who's joining as a fresher or be it the person who's joining at a leadership team. Because you would be lucky if you knew them from before, right? But not always for every position would you know people, right? In your own, professional circle or people whom you've known earlier. So it's a lot of time it's a gamble. It's a more of a good decision that is making them meet a lot of people, and it works out. But the kind of impact that a wrong hire can have in an organization is disastrous, right? Right from the culture of the organization to, the way you're building the product, the way you're kind of taking it to the market, right? You need to have the right people. And like you rightly said, that is what the one thing that we continuously keep focusing on. We continuously, keep making sure that the people who are a part of our journey today, right? We don't treat them as resources or subordinates. We treat them as equals, because we want that each and every one of them who is working in an organization has similar amount of ownership that the founders have today, right? Because they have left their comfortable, possibly their comfortable jobs, to be a part of a madness, right? And I think that's the culture that we need to kind of build. And for that, the right people and getting them is a challenge.
Absolutely. The Beatles said you can't buy love. Well, today, the theory is you can't buy people. You've got to nurture love. You've also got to nurture people. I think that's a very, very telling fact. Thank you for that, Colleen. Now, if you look at the dissimilarities, another one that comes to mind is the difference between cash earn and cash burn. Right? Typically, a legacy, you try to view it as an organization that focuses on earning cash, on the bottom line. A newbie, in its desire to impress, because here he's only trying to impress the customer, well, majority the customer, he's trying to impress both the customer as well as the investor in equal proportion. Sometimes it's more the investor than the customer. And that's where the theory of cash burn comes into play. Whereas with him, he's looking at the bottom line and at cash earned. So I'm going to throw this question on to you, because I feel you have a more challenging task on hand, dealing with two stakeholders out here. How much is the element of a cash burn to your advantage? How dissuasive it is for your progress? Because you can run out of cash.
Absolutely. So, organizations, let us take two parts of newbies, like you kind of call them, right? One are which are bootstrapped and one which are funded by investors. I think bootstrap companies are completely conscious about, where they're kind of investing their money and how they're kind of, growing. And they choose to be sometimes bootstrap because saying that, hey, you know what, we don't mind taking sometimes a little bit of more time to kind of grow. But for companies which are invested into, which have capital, and I don't mean unlimited capital at disposal, but they have some capital to kind of grow fast. And I think, yes, in that, when you have capital, you are also having the expectation that how are you going to deploy that capital, right? I wouldn't call it cash burn, because for the simple reason that every time that you're spending that money, right, is actually going behind growth. If you are actually investing it behind improving your product, right? Yes, are your revenues matching your cash burn? Not always, because you're a new organization. Sometimes you are spending money to create better experiences, which will pay off in the future, right? And hopefully someday, OnSurety also will be a 45-year-old organization, and we will be having a large, customer base also.
I'll take you up on that in a while from now, but looking at bottom line perhaps is also a good strategy, simply, and it would have worked very well if you were doing that during COVID, because that's the way that you can actually conserve a lot of your business. Did you have that experience? Were you able to put that into practice?
To me?
Yeah.
See, I think bottom line ultimately, or making profit, is the objective of all businesses, be it a legacy company or startup. I think what is only different is at what stage each of the company is. Maybe the startup is at an investment stage where they are more driving towards the growth. And for legacy company, obviously, it's both. Of course, they have to drive growth, and of course, they have to drive profit as well. So In fact, yes, for any company, hence, profitability is important. Even for us, that has always been there, even during the COVID period. Yes, how do you ensure with so much of uncertainties, when suddenly COVID happened and, everything shut down. So where you didn't have any clue what's going to happen after 1 month. So yes, how do you ensure that many things didn't get disturbed? First of all, your employees. Second, yes, the overall performance of the company, etc. But yes, as a company, I think we could manage it well. And profit has grown only since then.
Wonderful. I've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to pace things up a little bit. One different factor between, or perhaps between both of you in terms of a target is one needs to get wealthy, the other needs to stay wealthy. So I want a round of the house to understand or help me understand, which do you think is more difficult? To get wealthy or to stay wealthy? How many of you feel that getting wealthy is more difficult than staying wealthy? Could you just raise your hand? All right, just a few people. How many of you feel staying wealthy is more difficult than getting wealthy? It seems to be a 50-50. What about you, sir?
I think nothing comes easy, is what I would say. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy or becoming wealthier. See, even wealthy people always want to become wealthier. So yes, both has its own challenges. And I think yes.
What about you? You're at phase 1 right now.
I think it's all about perspective, right? Getting wealthy and staying wealthy, both of them, if you get comfortable with staying wealthy, right, then what are you, then I think this is exactly the topic, right? Are you becoming in your own way a legacy, saying, मैं wealthy हूँ, right? But I think there is no stopping, and I don't mean wealthy only from a material perspective, right? But when you talk about wealthy, and it's a continuous journey, right? If you are innovating, you're always getting wealthy. You will never stay wealthy. You'll only keep getting more and more wealthy, right? So I think that would be my answer, saying that you're always in the journey to getting wealthy. You're never in the destination of saying, I've become wealthy.
One of the critical differences between the two is that both of you who get wealthy or stay wealthy require to take right decisions. To stay wealthy, you've got to take a lesser number of bad decisions. Think about it. The lesser number of bad decisions you take, the wealthier you're able to stay. Okay, picking up the pace again. I'm going to take 5 elements, and I'm going to ask both of you on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 means favorable and 1 is least favorable. How do you think India is for a legacy brand and for a startup? Starting with you, Harsh. Laws. 1 to 5. What number would you give it? 4. Means it's favorable. What about you?
I think the kind of disruption that we're doing, I would put it at 3.
3. Number 2, policies, government policies.
4.
Wow. 8. What about you?
Actually, the kind of sector that we are in would definitely say 4.
4. 7. So 8 to 7. The third would be the society's mindset.
I would say again 4.
12 to 7. What about you?
I'll put it 2 because, every disruption she sees a lot of, resistance, right? Because sometimes no one wants to try something new. People are just comfortable with what they have. So I think mindset change is required, and that's what we are fighting for at the end of the day. So 2.
All right. What about education? That's 12 to 9. What about education and awareness? What would you put that on a scale of 1 to 5?
I think in our industry, particularly in the FMCG, I would rate it as 3.
3. It's 15. What about you?
I think I was going to go for the same number, 3, because the kind of industry that we are, people just have no idea of what's happening except for things in silos. So 3.
All right, 15 to 12. My final point is professionalism in this country. What about you, Sue?
I would again rate it's 4.
4, 16 to 12, and you?
3.
3, 15. So, by and large, if I take an analysis of 16 to 14, India seems to be more wired to accept a legacy brand vis-a-vis a newbie. That's the ethos of my analysis in a very simple mathematical. But then, of course, this is a program, and we know that the hard realities are far more different. I have 5.5 minutes to go, so I'm going to do one final exercise, and I'm going to ask you to just swap your seats. You just interchange your seats.
Is he becoming Colleen Shah?
Do you like this seat better?
It's nice and warm.
What about you, Harsh? Do you like? All right. So I'm going to ask you. I'll start with you, Colleen, because you're closer to me, proximity. Imagine on-surety as being a 45-year-old brand. What are the things that you'd be doing right now? What are the first things that come to mind?
I would be questioning whether I'm innovating. I would be questioning whether our flexibility is being questioned from an innovation perspective. Are we kind of really meeting the customers' demands? Are we really still providing that same experience or even better, right? Is our brand really that brand that we started off with? And are we, are we delivering the vision, or have we got strayed, right? I think those are questions that I'm asking myself right now and saying, hey, it's time up. There are a lot of companies out there who are disrupting, and what am I doing at this point of time?
So the seat is not that warm as you think it is, right? It's hot.
Not anymore.
What about you, Harsh? I mean, look at a brand called Imami, which nobody knows about. Doesn't exist. And tomorrow you've got to start building things from scratch. What would you do?
I think, I believe consumer is the king. And hence, I think what is most important is to understand or to identify a very latent consumer need and put all the energy and effort towards solving that rather than trying to make money. So it will be all about, how do you identify and solve a consumer need gap, right? Obviously for that, you need to go and meet the consumers, spend a lot of time with them, and, with those insights, try and identify a problem. So that becomes the basic thing. Obviously post that, yes, making a team who can then execute and deliver on that is something which is very, very critical. So these are the two most important things, which I believe, I would do in case I have to start all over.
Now, I'm going to end off by a narrative. And I run a commercial organization in the education world called EduMate, which connects the education world, and a philanthropy also which educates the girl child. And I conducted a campaign, last year, and that was to understand what is entrepreneurship among students, and whether they're interested in being an entrepreneur. And about 20% of the people responded to say they want to become an entrepreneur. I said, wow, that's a huge amount of people. But save your breath there. The reasons that came out were even more intriguing. The reasons for becoming an entrepreneur amongst the student was, I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I want to be a master of my own will. I cannot work under anybody. I am the son or the daughter of a businessman, so I have to do business. I am the daughter of a son of a government servant. I have to prove him wrong, so I need to do business. Those were the thoughts for entrepreneurship. Where do you think they went wrong? Where was the misdirection? And I tried to delve deep into it to understand. And for me, you know what is the biggest impediment as an entrepreneur or the thought of a student? Was that all these fallacies started with the word I. And I brought in ego. And if ego comes into play, you stop yearning. If you stop yearning, you stop learning. And if you stop learning, you stop earning. And the second facet of this word I was entrepreneurship has nothing to do with I. It has to do with you. Unless I'm able to observe you, look at your need, look at your pain point, what am I going to fulfill? And that's why I felt there was such a detachment in the word. You know, when we studied at Harvard, they defined entrepreneurship as a relentless pursuit of an opportunity with resources beyond your control. And the operative words out here are relentless. You've got to be constant, consistent, committed. Resources are limited, which means you've got to be efficient all the time. And it's beyond your control, which means you've got to be creative at every single juncture. And that's why entrepreneurship is not just a difficult word to spell. It's not just a difficult word to pronounce. It's a very difficult word to experience. And it is an exceptionally difficult word to excel in. And that's why I require a round of applause for Colleen Shah and Harsha Agarwal for being such splendid entrepreneurs as they are today. You know, Google has said that in half a decade from now, half the jobs of the world are going to be lost. They haven't told us which half, right? But it's because of that half which is missing in a country which houses the world's youngest population and the oldest of civilizations, that you will need job seekers in a far less number that you have as opposed to job creators. You need people who are going to create jobs, like these two gentlemen out here. Because job creation and entrepreneurship is not about profit. It's about creating value. It's about taking accountability of your own lives. It's about a mindset of making yourself responsible. So if you have got to coalesce the legacies of the West and try and match it with the enterprise of India, then you have a world which has got all the C's in place: creativity, commitment, collaboration, and correctiveness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes the ideas of India. Thank you for being a very participative audience. Thank you for your time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for summarizing that very interesting conversation so well. I'd request you all to please remain on stage as I now invite Mona Jain, Chief Revenue Officer, ABP Network, to present our guests with a token of thanks. Can the memento be brought forward, please? Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Shah, for your time. Thank you, Mona, for doing the honors, and thank you, Chetanji, for conducting that lovely conversation for us. A quick photo opportunity there, ladies and gentlemen, as I make this Next announcement, we have a wonderful, very engaging session coming up at 1:45, and a powerhouse actress is joining us. Taapsee Pannu will be joining us. So I request your cooperation in sticking to the schedule as we break for lunch now, 1 to 1:45. We'll see you back then. Thank you so much.